Back on.
All right, welcome back. We took a little break there from the feed because the YouTube stream, apparently we only get 4 hours on YouTube. Oh, well.
I thought you were being censored.
I thought I was being canceled, but did I say something earlier that canceled us? Oh, well, we'll figure it out. We are back. Election night, live broadcast here at FITSNews.com. Last 4 hours, it has been my absolute privilege to sit here with Rick Quinn. Has been providing incredible analysis of polls across the country. We've been looking at a better than expected night on a lot of fronts for former President Donald Trump, who appears to be well positioned in the blue wall to perhaps win one, maybe two of these states that are absolutely necessary for Kamala Harris. But as we went to break the last time, Rick, we were talking about some state races. We were talking about how the Republicans in South Carolina have a massive supermajority in both the state Senate and the State House of Representatives, but they are adding to those numbers, Rick, and they're doing it in districts with huge percentages of minority populations.
And it's not just there. I mean, the solicitor's candidate, and I know I'm going to get all the counties wrong, but it's in the PD area there, Chesterfield, I believe Darlington. Gosh, I hate that I can't recall instantly the four counties, but it's a 43% black district. Republican won that district.
Wow.
And interestingly enough, the candidate, I don't know Mr. Birch, who won the solicitor seat, had both of his parents, his father and his mother, were a longtime Democrats and served in the House of Representatives. So he and I don't know the guy, but here he runs as a Republican and wins in a county and wins a solicitor's district that with 40% over 40% minority constituency.
Yeah,
that's just. The math doesn't add up, and really, the only way that's possible is just abject failure of the Democratic Party.
Well, they have been behind the eight ball for a long time here in South Carolina. We've talked about how in years past, South Carolina was a white Democratic state. They ran the roost for centuries, dating back to the very foundation of the state. But since 1995, when Republicans gained control of the House, then 6 years later, the state Senate, they have not surrendered that control, and they have now expanded into these massive supermajorities that they're continuing to add on even in this election cycle. Also, let's not forget, Rick, all the statewide offices run by Republicans. 6 of the 7 congressional districts occupied by Republicans. Both U.S. Senate seats, Republicans. What do Democrats have to do to break through here?
Find new leadership. I mean, honestly, I just don't know. If you're losing as a Democrat, and it's, look, I spent a good part of my career running races and running uphill, so to speak. But how can you look at the people running your operations, running your campaigns, and say to yourself, we're okay. We need to keep the course. Losing Joe Jefferson's seat at 44% minority constituency in that district. That's not. It's just not. They need to change horses.
You have to try to fail that bad.
Yeah, you do. And I'll tell you, as a Republican, the big thing, it's awesome that we're winning these seats, and it's so good to see that. We survived this whole issue with and Trump has helped us to eke out this huge victories that we're having. But these big numbers come with consequences, and the infighting that we talked about earlier, we got to come together as a party, and the voters have given Republicans a gift in terms of the leadership of the state. We can't let them down, because if you do, it'll change quick, man. I've seen it in my career with the Democrats before, and it could happen again. We just and again, I would say, I'm just conservatively estimating 100,000 votes could change this complexity of the state.
Yeah.
So we've been given a great honor. Let's not fail them, in terms of as a party.
We talk about these massive supermajorities, Republican supermajorities. We talk about the Republicans gaining more ground, but for years, I think it was 3 years in a row, the South Carolina General Assembly was ranked as the most liberal Republican-controlled legislature in America. This was not when you were in, Rick.
Of course, well, folks.
But that's not conservative. We saw the conservative wing of the Republican Party literally targeted for extinction in this cycle. The House Republican leadership spent $2 million trying to take out the conservative wing of the party. And again, not all of those are great guys, but a lot of them are. A lot of them are very principled on fiscal issues. You talk about the party getting together, and again, I don't want to lump you on one side or the other, but doesn't there need to be a bit of an acknowledgement that a lot of the Republicans who run with that are, and who say certain things on the campaign trail, they turn around, they get to Columbia, they don't act like conservatives?
Yeah, and the other thing too is I don't disagree. And when I was majority leader, we had our malcontents. Mickey Watley, Jake Knotts. These guys, they were guys that always were kind of pushing the party one way, and there would be fights between them. And it was kind of my job as majority leader to keep people in the group and try to keep us together. But I think honestly, with the growth we've been having in the budget, I want to get back to what we talked about earlier. We ought to take the opportunity to prepare South Carolina for the future, and with real tax reform. Really taking a hard look at how we pay for government and building a tax structure that will allow South Carolina to continue to grow and succeed. Because we got so many opportunities with this port expansion going on in Charleston and the incredible environment we have here in terms as a state with all of our natural resources. We need to take advantage of that and not just sit around and argue with each other and focus on making South Carolina citizens' jobs or lives better. And that starts in my mind with the economy and tax reform. And I just want to see us, it's something we need to challenge ourselves on. Look at Florida. Look what's happening in Florida and Texas right now and the boom they're having. I give that a lot of that is to their tax structure, and they have a lot of local control of their tax dollars as opposed to stuff going to us to the capital city. Florida, for example, one of the things we need to look at with their gas tax, a lot of it's kept locally. They don't go; it doesn't go to the state, and then they parse it out to different elected officials. They let their local communities run their road systems. Here, everything's handled by the state pretty much with some money going for C funds for the county. So we just have a lot of issues that we need to grab a hold of and reform. And take advantage of this opportunity that voters gave us.
Well, I agree with you. And again, I don't want to keep harping on these Republican leaders in the General Assembly, but I got to point this out too. We talked about how important it was earlier in the show to get money back to individual income earners, to small businesses, which are the real drivers of job creation in South Carolina. They're the ones that are creating the jobs. But we don't do that. And every time we talk to lawmakers about it, oh, well, there's just not enough support for it. There's not the political will for it. Let me tell you about political will. When Scout Motors came here wanting $1.3 billion from the state, that went from a drafted bill to law in 12 days, less than 2 weeks. So every time I hear these people now telling me, oh, we don't have the will for that, or we don't have time to get that done, bullshit. They got plenty of time to get it done. 12 days from legislation or from writing the bill to it becoming law. And it's stuff like that pisses me off, because think about the good that could have been done for small businesses in South Carolina with that kind of money. Think about the $1.8 billion that they found that they could have given back, that Larry Grooms, a Republican, refused to give back. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that, we talk about Republicans and electing Republicans, and tonight we're electing more Republicans. Here's my question. When the hell are they going to start acting like Republicans?
Well, and going back to when I was majority leader, it was a source of real friction between me and leadership at times, because I had this bill that I'd been working on for years, and it was really important to me to try to figure out how to get property taxes away from paying for schools and to reform our income tax system. And I had the same kind of thing said to me when we would have $400 or $500 million in new money to spend. And, I agree. But I'll say this too, I think some of this is related to the fact that our party is getting so big that, when you say leadership, there's so many voices at some point, sometimes people get drowned out. And then I agree. Look, there was mistakes made in terms of going after all the Freedom Caucus members, and heck, some of them weren't even Freedom Caucus members and had opponents. I won't name names. There's a lady that ran that she wasn't really a member of the Freedom Caucus, but she was lumped into that group. Yeah, and I think I got to believe it. Some of that was the coming of the consultants playing games and wanting to have more candidates. But I'll just look. We need to not point fingers at each other and just get back to conservative principles. I agree with you, and I don't know how to best do that. Not having served in the chamber for almost 7 years, I just think To me, it's a really big challenge that we've been given by these voters, and they're going to expect results. And if they think we're just going to keep doing the same thing and they're going to keep sending Republicans back, don't let these big margins fool you. Yeah. And at some point, these Democrats are maybe going to get smart and start running races for a change, and then we're going to have a fight on our hands. That's my feeling. And
that's a wise warning. That's one that not a lot of Republicans have been heeding, because I think they've been so successful kind of just doing what they've been doing. But the other thing, Rick, as we know, Democrats non-existent electorally, but when it comes to the halls of power in Columbia, people like Todd Rutherford, people like Gerald Malloy, who we are told may have lost his seat tonight.
Yeah, I'd heard that it was like 5/10 of a point or something crazy. Wow. 228 votes, something crazy like that.
But those are powerful guys in Columbia. They're in the minority party, but they wield tremendous influence. I mean, Todd Rutherford, with his role appointing judges, Gerald Malloy in the Senate, one of the most adept parliamentarians and an incredibly good rules guy over there. I mean, Gerald Malloy, if he doesn't like your bill, he can block it single-handedly in the Senate. I mean, he's a guy who wields tremendous influence, but they're in the minority party with. I mean, how does that work?
Well, that's and I've been, I kept talking about the Socratic method earlier. Honestly, to me, there is some. I'm not sitting here telling you I'm for the filibuster system. There is some logic to it, because sometimes a bunch of people do really stupid things, and you might need one person to stop mistakes being made. So mob rule is not necessarily always the best, but I think they need to guard some of that carefully. But yeah, I mean, and by the way, have we gotten any numbers on the Finley race again? I mean, I keep getting.
Yeah, we're still waiting to hear on Kirkman Finley. I heard conflicting reports. Some are saying that he's up by 1,000. Some are saying he's down by 1,000. We will continue to track that race. That was obviously one of the very closest races that we were watching. One of the few swing.
Well, I'm not sure 100% sure if this is right, but I'm getting some indication that Bauer may have declared victory.
Oh boy!
But that's happened before. I've seen that happen. We'll talk to you. I've given my age here, but I think I've been close to doing this for almost 40 years. I mean, there have been a couple of times when people walked out and declared victory and didn't have it. And
it has happened before. We were looking at District 75, Bauer with 52.9%, Kirkman with 46.9%. We don't know how much is left out there. That is a 1,000 vote margin, though, for Democrat Heather Bauer over Republican Kirkman Finley. That would be one of the few Republican losses this evening if it does hold.
Well, and look, I think I said that earlier. I mean, that was, I ran the race there in that House district for, oh my goodness, probably 4 cycles, and it's a
Democratic district.
It's a silk stocking college district. I mean, I think some of the same things that may have helped Russell Ott get through this may if it's true what I'm seeing, may have helped her. But I'm getting people all over the board on this. I've heard I'm hearing from one person that she declared victory, and from another that Kirkman's doing well. But we'll see.
Yeah, we're going to keep our eye on that district. Obviously, that's a big one. A lot of folks have been watching it. It has not been called from what we're seeing, but we will certainly keep our eye on it. Kirkman Finley's race, one of the only really swing districts that are certainly in the Midlands region of the House. A few others in other parts of the state that Republicans are winning, as you pointed out. But I wanted to ask you that, we're looking right now at Heather Bauer up by 1,000 with 28% of the vote left to report. So it's 53-47 Heather Bauer over Kirkman Finley, but there's still a big chunk, 28% of the vote hanging out there in that race. All the congressional races in South Carolina, as we pointed out, have been called. No surprises there. 6 Republicans who were their nominees. Only one new one there. Sherry Biggs up in the 3rd district. She will be a new representative in the U.S. Congress.
One thing just getting back to the local stuff for just a second. One thing I'm interested in seeing how many of these courthouse races were like Birch's race that I talked about earlier. From my experience, very often the county politics follows the courthouse and the sheriff's office, and so these these local victories and solicitors, sheriff's races, county council. If that's being mirrored there, that's going to make a Democrat comeback in my lifetime really tough, because if you control the sheriff's offices and the courthouses, that's when your local support systems and organizations just take over. And so that'll be interesting. If what happened with Mr. Birch winning that solicitor's race happens in other local offices like that, that's a big deal.
No, it would be. And those local offices, even with the Republican takeover at the state level, Rick, you're right. So many of those smaller rural local counties where Republicans just haven't had a chance, they're starting to pick up some ground.
Yeah,
tonight.
And I think that's going to have a ripple effect. And it wouldn't surprise me some of these local offices start having party switchers.
Oh yeah,
not wanting the.
That's the other thing. We've been talking about this Republican red wave in South Carolina over the last quarter century, where the Republicans went from, being a minority party to being a now overwhelming supermajority. That didn't happen overnight. It happened over the course of the last quarter century. But we talked about how they don't always govern as Republicans, and one of the reasons is, as we pointed out, you just said it. So many people just switch parties.
Right.
Luke Rankin.
Oh man! Look here. When in '87, the leading Democrats in the Senate were Harvey Peeler, Hugh Leatherman. I mean, you can go down the list, bro.
Yeah, all of them.
All of them. Parties. Yeah, I mean, Leatherman literally went from being the minority leader for the Democratic Party just a few years later being the majority leader for the Republican Party.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
and I'm sure he dramatically changed his principles over that period, right?
Well,
his philosophy of government completely changed.
God rest his soul. There wasn't a lot of changing with Hugh Leatherman. He was pretty set in his ways from the first day I met him. But yeah, no, it's real. And look, the funny thing was, I think I said that, I may have said this earlier, I'm not sure, but we didn't have the majority when David Wilkins was elected speaker. We had two Democrats that voted with him to make him speaker without having the majority. So, then they eventually switched parties. So, but yeah, that'll be next, I would imagine. And but interestingly enough, too. If what y'all said earlier about Trump having a shot at winning the popular vote,
yeah,
that's that might be an indication. I heard some of the prognosticators talking about how this might be a Reagan-like swing. I don't think it is. Dukakis, as we talked about before, Dukakis was only won one state, but it's a big deal if he won both the popular vote and the Electoral College. That could have repercussions politically for longer than Donald Trump's around, because of what it may do to the local offices, just like it's happening here. Maybe these local offices in other states may be also having similar results.
Donald Trump is winning the popular vote at the moment, 52.2%, a little over 53.2 million votes. Kamala Harris at 46.5%, 47.4 million votes. Rick, some numbers I wanted to share with you. We've been talking about Pennsylvania all night. We've been talking about how critical it's going to be to both candidates, how paths to victory still exist without Pennsylvania, but they are incredibly difficult. The degree of difficulty goes up. If you lose Pennsylvania, you got to win at least two other states to make up for it. Looking at the vote in Pennsylvania now, more than 3/4 of the vote in Pennsylvania is in, 76%. Donald Trump at 51.1, Kamala Harris at 47.9. The estimated margin of victory for Trump in Pennsylvania, again, this is according to the New York Times, tracking where they think the votes are still out there, 2.2% in favor of Donald Trump. And in fact, the New York Times, which has been sunshine pumping Kamala Harris for a while, is now claiming that Pennsylvania is leaning Trump. It is no longer a toss-up. That is significant.
I keep looking at that map, though, and I'm wondering what's going on with Arizona. I still keep seeing, because that could change, and Virginia. I mean, those are two states that are a lot closer than I thought they would be.
Yeah.
And particularly if Arizona, if it doesn't go our way, the math's going to change a little bit. 11 votes is nothing to sneeze at.
No, you're right. And again, so far tonight, no surprises. All the states that we've shaded here are states that we fully expected would go the direction they've gone.
Well, let me ask a question. What is Virginia saying right now? I know it's still light blue on your on her map.
Yeah, Jenny has been having some fun with the colors tonight. Our Jen Wood has been having some fun with our colors, but Virginia has 82% of the vote in, Rick. Kamala Harris is at 50%. Trump is at 48.3%. And the projected margin for Harris still at 4.7, which is about what the polls
in Arizona
had suggested. We will check out Arizona. 53% of the vote is in Arizona. Trump still razor thin. These are the same numbers actually that we saw a couple minutes ago. 1.8 million votes in the bank. Trump with an incredibly narrow 3,000 vote lead. He's at 49.66%. Kamala Harris at 49.53%. Razor thin in Arizona. However, again, those New York Times folks, not any friend of Trump, but they are saying that Trump is going to win it by 4.6%. So
I hope that's true. I mean, and look, like I said, I'm not one to compliment the New York Times, but I will say their website and how they track this is pretty darn good.
Now, if only they'd cover the races as well as they,
Well, and it's the Trump derangement syndrome. I'll tell you, it's a thing, man. It really is a thing. Talking to some of my Democrat friends and some of these in the media, it really is remarkable. They kept saying he's an existential threat over and over again. And okay, so you think he's threatening your existence, really? Seriously.
Well,
you just want to take a breath here, brother.
But let's think about that. Because we were talking earlier in the segment about Kamala Harris and some of her comments on free speech, some of her comments on criminalizing misinformation. I mean, is it hyperbole for me to say that that's an existential threat to my business?
Yeah, I mean, and but the guy was in office for 4 years. What's he going to do? Blow an atom bomb up in the middle of the country? I mean, he was already president, and like him or not, I mean, existential threat.
Yeah,
and it's amazing to me how in some of the constituencies that read these the papers and watch these different broadcasts. I mean, I've also been kind of alarmed as I've gotten older. I used to always have the thought that most people overlook the press and they make their own decisions, but there's an alarming number of people who just hear that, and that's part of what I think's divided our country. They end up just mirroring that thought process. So,
well, the division is something even if Trump wins the popular vote, which no one I thought saw coming, even if he does sweep these swing states, which I don't think anyone saw that coming either, he's going to face a divided country. In fact, whoever wins, the prospect of political violence is higher than usual. Let's at least say that it's higher than usual. Let me ask you this: assuming a Trump victory, will there be rioting? Do you think we'll see rioting in the big cities?
I certainly hope not. I wouldn't discount the possibility.
Does the margin matter here? Does somebody need to have a convincing win to keep people from rioting?
It sure would be nice not to have an argument about these things for once. I'm coming in with us.
We're getting Dylan to hang out with us. Some relief pitching here. Rick and I have been at it now for over 4 hours here on election night trying to track these results.
Andrew has kindly agreed to work the switchboard here for some time.
And Dylan, you got your milk with you. Look at the cup.
I'm in charge here.
Look at the cup.
This is a Beaufort thrift store original that my parents gifted me for Christmas last year, the PMPED original.
What does the M stand for in that cup, Dylan?
That would be Murdoch.
That's the old Murdoch law firm cup right there.
Ah, okay.
That's a bold and aggressive milk choice, Dylan Nolan.
How'd you get a hold of that?
Got to get the protein in. My parents found it at the thrift store that my dad volunteers over. They said we got to get this.
Where's he do this?
This is the Catholic church down there in Beaufort. They live down in Beaufort, and I can't remember the name of the church, but they run a thrift store, and he's over there occasionally helping out.
Well, it's I still, there was an Irma boy that was a member of that firm. I think Mark Ball was his name. He's from these parts, and maybe I need to call him and see if I can get me a couple of those cups.
Wow, those are nice. We found a Parker Law koozie as well.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of my folks are going radio silent on the Kirkman race. That's just interesting because it looked like it was so promising, and now it seems.
It could be slipping away from her. You're right.
Well, it may be. Who knows? It's and Richland County is horrible about how they handle the votes. least, and look, I haven't been in the Richland County Election Commission, so I'm not disparaging people that I haven't seen and been around for almost 10 years. But back in the day when I was in Richland County a lot, it was always a hard county to get vote counts out of.
No, they're not very adept at counting votes. They're not really adept at much in Richland. I don't know if you've been on the roads here in Richland County. The roads are terrible. The schools are terrible. We've been talking about the two school districts, Richland 1 and Richland 2.
Well, it's interesting though. When you talked about, that's how I got my started in politics when I ran the first time. Is the whole idea was that they wanted to absorb this area, which was called Richland Lexington 5. It used to be they were all countywide schools. And this Richland Lexington 5 is one of the few school districts that crosses county lines. And that was the issue that came up is the legislative delegation wanted to bring Irmo and Richland County portion of Irmo and Ballantyne back into Richland 2 schools. So that's why one of the things that caused me to run. So yeah, it was a big issue back then. Richland 2 has been a menace for. And look, that's the kind of thing we're really failing our kids. I mean, and that we were talking about how I don't believe the issues of race are really about race. It's more about socioeconomics and education. They're just doing a disservice to those kids, not giving them a proper education. And, I'm not saying it never happens where the kids make it out of those kind of situations, but it makes it awful hard. And just to me, it's really.
But Rick, we kept hearing for years that if we just put more money into these schools, if we just spend more money, if we just raise that base student costs, if we just pass another referendum, I mean, we are here at nearly $19,000 per child per year in South Carolina's government-run system. 19 grand, and we're still producing the worst outcomes, apples to apples, in the country.
Here's my kid. I'm so proud of my son Trace and my daughter Caroline both. But Trace is going to Gray Collegiate Academy, which was obviously a public charter school, and he's going to if he stays where he's going, he's going to graduate Gray Collegiate with being almost a junior in college. So nice. I think 36 hours is what he would have if he stays on track. So. I'm happy that we're starting to kind of free up and have more options for parents and give different ideas. Gray, one of the things that's just I was nervous about taking Trace out of River Bluff and sending him to Gray Academy, but it's a pretty brilliant scheme. You know what they do? If you do all your homework and you score well on your test, which my son does, he gets off Friday.
That's a pretty good incentive.
He's only had to go to Friday school once in his career. I think it's once.
Guys, we don't have it. Yes, we do on our board. The first battleground state of the 2024 election, the first battleground state has been called for former President Donald Trump. The state of North Carolina will go to Donald Trump.
It's really funny because all the pollsters, and I talked to 3 or 4 of them, I think you probably figured out, I have a friend in one of them because I'm bragging about them a little bit, but I promised I wouldn't say their name. But I kept hearing that North Carolina was a heck of a lot closer than Georgia. So it's interesting that they're calling North Carolina first.
16 electoral votes for Donald Trump with the win in North Carolina. That puts him at 230. He is now 40 away from the magic number. Now, North Carolina obviously is a state he narrowly won in 2020. It's the only one of these battleground states that he won in 2020. But a win here for Donald Trump, and that's significant. Kamala Harris put some significant effort and some money, attending rallies. I mean, this was the state they really thought was in play.
But it's interesting, and I had read stories about how they pulled something around $2 or $3 million in spending. I guess it was last week out of North Carolina, which a campaign that has $1 billion. Why are they taking $2 million out of North Carolina? So that was one of the other warning signs.
I actually referenced that in my reporting. Will and I were kind of going back and forth on why were they pulling this? Because to me, $2 million and $1 billion budget is a drop in the bucket. I actually thought they might have just been reapportioning things, and that was kind of the noise and not really signal that they might have been putting it into digital or something they thought was
that's
more
very possible.
effective.
They could have been shipped into different markets, and but it kept coming back. What I kept reading and hearing was that they definitely pulled at least 2 million and maybe more. But the internal polling, in a presidential race, and I think I've forgotten how many I've been involved in, but we would poll nightly, and we would do what's called rolling rolling samples. So we would, have a 3-night sample, and you would knock one night off, and after the new night came, and so they're getting a lot more up to date numbers and probably larger samples than are on Real Clear Politics. They probably knew that they were a losing cause there. Which I keep going back to Will's New Hampshire prediction. I mean, it's where is that, Mr.?
No,
I know, Mr. I noticed Mr. Folks stopped talking about that one.
We're going to get there in a minute. First, some numbers out of Michigan we want to get to real quick. 35% of the vote in, Donald Trump at 52.3%, Kamala Harris 45.9%. The expected margin, 2.4% for Trump. And
in Michigan.
In Michigan. And the New York Times has now moved it from a toss-up to leaning Trump. This is another one of these blue wall states that's absolutely critical. Guys,
seeing as how I called that one being a Harris state, and I said at the outset, that it was obviously very close there, but that was everybody that, and I even had one of my pollster friends was doing polling for Musk's PAC, Elon Musk's PAC.
Oh wow!
Everybody agreed that was going to be the hard nut to crack for Trump. So that's good news for the party.
Rick, you asked about New Hampshire. 71% of the vote in. It has gotten closer. Kamala Harris at 51.7%. Donald Trump at 47.3%. That race is within now, obviously, 5 points.
Yeah.
So it was a much bigger advantage.
Look, I think we talked about it. You don't stop in the middle in the waning days of a campaign and go make a half-day visit and put Biden out there clearly not wanting him to be front and center for the campaign. They were worried about it. There was no question they were worried about it.
Yeah.
But it seems like, and again, I think even I don't think I'm not sure Atlas had a poll in New Hampshire, but I think the last I saw it was right at 5 points. So it's going to be interesting to see.
No, you're right. There was a Rasmussen poll that had it a little closer, but.
And I can't remember, Rasmussen, he's not running the operation anymore. And I can't remember the name of the fellow that runs his operation, but he was one of the ones that predicted, just like Robert did, a Trump wave here. So
I want to ask you guys this, and we're starting to get numbers in that are pointing in a certain direction, but we saw so much, I called it sunshine pumping, coming from both sides. There were, Bakari Seller's a good friend of mine, but man, he was pumping some serious sunshine for Kamala Harris.
And he's still, by the way, have you seen his most recent message on Twitter?
Hit us with what is our good friend Bakari saying?
I know. I think this might be some sort of internal, Democrat email that he has just published. It's very interesting, though. It has 3 talking points. Pennsylvania, we overperformed turnout expectations in Philly, overperformed our early vote in Bucks. We don't have election day results from Philly yet, but we do know that we overperformed turnout expectations there. We have seen especially high turnout in places with large non-white and student populations. We expect to see higher turnout in Philly than 2020. Outside of Philadelphia, we have limited data on turnout and support right now, but what we do have is tracking with our expectations. We're awaiting more results, like everyone else, and hope to have a closer read in the coming hours. In Michigan, we're waiting a significant number of votes to come in. The city of Detroit won't be reported out until roughly midnight, but we have seen strong turnout throughout the early vote and election day there. Other results in Michigan are harder to parse since the results are coming in on a more piecemeal basis. In Wisconsin, we know there are a significant amount of votes remaining in Dane and Milwaukee counties, and we are seeing signs of strong performance in the WOW counties where we have partial data. We don't expect complete results from Wisconsin until tomorrow morning between 3 and 5 a.m.
Bakari's a good friend of mine too, and he's in my fantasy football league with us, and so I got a lot of love and appreciation for Bakari, but he's definitely whistling past the graveyard on that one.
Ooh, Rick Quinn.
I'm just being honest here. It's the idea that
I've seen his Twitter feed, and I say this as somebody who thinks fondly of him as a person. I first met him in our reporting on these sexual assault cases that his firm was litigating against the cheer industry. That's where I really got to know him. So I certainly have a lot of appreciation for what he does, but I agree with your whistling past the grave remarks as far as just his general Twitter commentary in the last couple of weeks. And I get it. He's a surrogate. He's doing his job.
He is, and probably the odds-on favorite to replace Clyburn. So he's got to carry the company line in some ways to ensure that. He's going to be really hard to beat when Clyburn does retire, for sure.
Don't forget an early Kamala supporter, and he was one of the guys when there was discussion, and you talked about this earlier, Rick, about how Kamala was kind of anointed and that rubs some folks the wrong way. But one of the guys who was critical in that, particularly here in South Carolina, was Bakari Sellers.
Someone had to do the anointing.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the guys, and he's a tremendous, the guys on CNN, tremendously influential voice in the party. And it'll be interesting, Rick, we're talking about these races here in South Carolina with the black vote seeming to slip away from the Democrats or not turn out. It'll be interesting to watch a guy like Bakari Sellers and see how he starts to position himself. Obviously, he is kind of towing the company line tonight, but it'll be interesting to see how he.
A lot of his potential opponents got eliminated tonight because of the bad operations of the Democratic Party. But it's interesting. I do think Kamala. She clearly wasn't ready for prime time as a candidate. And in 2020, the 2020 primaries proved that. And to just anoint her over a 3 or 4 day period or whatever it was now, days seem like weeks now that so much has happened, but it wasn't smart. They should have had a vigorous debate, brought other voices in, and look, her pick was so seriously. Who really believes that Walz was a good pick? Does anybody? I mean, is anybody defending that pick? Here, you take him from a state that Republicans haven't won since 1984, and give up a Pennsylvania governor who was clearly very popular,
hugely popular.
I think that if she picked Shapiro, she very well might have won Pennsylvania and won the presidency this evening.
And I can point to no other reason for that other than I'm not going to sit here and call it anti-Semitism because I don't like saying
I think that's cutting with a broad cloth, but it certainly does endanger them with a portion of the electorate that they clearly didn't want to anger.
Yeah, and then look what it got them. And but anyway, they should have had a fight over it, and that would have even if Kamala had still won after a vigorous debate and fight over the party's nomination, it would have made her better. It would have made her better as a candidate.
She wouldn't have survived it. Look what happened in 2019. She didn't even make it to her home state's primary for a reason.
No, it's funny. I think everybody knows what word salad means now because that was everybody's description of her speeches and her answering questions. And even when you put her in forums where she was with friendly fire, so to speak, The View. I mean that I think that was one of the things that ended the race. Nothing comes to mind.
I mean, those questions weren't even softballs; they were t-ball.
Yeah, she probably had them in advance. She probably had them in advance.
Well, don't forget the edited 60 Minutes interview where, one of the most famed journalistic icons just poured itself out, lost all credibility.
And it may be time to talk about going back to some of the federal guidelines that we used to have with some of these newspaper and network outlets. I mean, there was a whole equal time issue where if they gave time to, and I think somebody raised this with Saturday Night Live the other night.
Well, Trump got a minute and a half. He got his equal time. They gave it to him.
But I think maybe we need to reconsider that because some of these news programs just now are now just so blatantly becoming mouthpieces for the Democratic Party. I mean, it seems to me that something needs to be done about, I'm not talking about limiting their speech, but I do think the idea that maybe they're just going to go along and do this without any kind of consequences maybe needs to stop. One of the things maybe, and I know what you're going to say, Mr. Libertarian. Well, folks,
I was about to say, are you going to be the misinformation?
No, but look, is it okay for them just to open up and for 60 minutes and edit? And allow essentially the Democratic Party to control the message of 60 Minutes, a news program for
the
network.
They can do it, but
flagship story show for the network.
I think they can do it, but I think the problem is, or what I find to be the best remedy is don't punish them or say they can't do that, but let them be mocked for doing it. Let the marketplace see what they did. And I think that was a perfect example of the marketplace at work. They censored her to try to make her look better. But the mass revulsion at the fact they did it probably cost her more than she ever gained by having a better answer.
It's gonna be interesting to see how they react to all this now. I mean, do they tack and try to actually have some sense of? Or
do you think we're going to go back into 4 more years of everybody's a Nazi and everything's awful? I mean, that's what we had from 2016 to 2020.
Look, I've met Trump twice in my life. I think what he's been through this year with I don't know the guy I know what everybody else does, but I just feel like I have a sense that he's probably going to start thinking legacy now. And as a president, if he wins tonight, if he in fact what looks like is going to happen happens, I got to believe it is his better angels, so to speak, are going to try to start kind of guiding his decision, and maybe he can bring some people together. I mean, I think it can surprise some people. I really do, in terms of what he can. If he now that he's looking at one more term, and the balance of his career is it may. I think who knows? Maybe he'll turn this wave into a
turn the page, so to speak.
Yeah. But he's a heck of a lot. I think that Rogan interview showed he's a lot nicer guy than people try to paint him. I know he has that kind of New York brash sense of humor, and it doesn't mind throwing a bomb at somebody here and there. But
especially if they're Rosie O'Donnell,
which she doesn't. Yeah, but no one ever talks about how she said that 9/11 was a conspiracy. That
Well, maybe people are agreeing with that more these days.
Well, yeah, maybe so.
That's even a bridge too far from my tinfoil hat.
Yeah, but she, it's the View. I mean, my gosh, who can watch that show? Who could watch it?
Well, I mean, we have become polarized, and Dylan and we're going to be launching a new series. We got to get you in on it, Rick. We're going to call it Divided States, and it is going to address just how divided this country is. It's going to address, why. We're going to bring people in to speak from kind of both sides of that divide. But one of the things I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the criticism of both sides, because we're talking earlier about how, the Democratic criticism of Trump, the existential threat. And we've become so hyperbolic in our criticism. And it goes both ways.
It does.
It goes both ways.
Look, I've been guilty of it in my career. I think anybody that has put their name on the ballot and campaigned and been in front of a TV camera probably has done it.
I mean, this week, Oprah Winfrey and Elon Musk, coming from completely different places, both said that if their side loses, this is going to be the last election.
Yeah, I mean, which is just crazy talk. I mean, and look, honestly, with some of the First Amendment things that Trump that Elon's brought up, I mean, and showed, he's probably more right than she is. But that's what I got back to. I would. Did you ever watch any of the firing lines? I mean, you're too young to. You weren't even alive when. Did you ever watch any of the firing lines of Bill Buckley?
No,
they're all on YouTube.
Okay.
You need to just
Was Milton Friedman ever on it? If so,
I don't
watch
remember
that
Milton
one.
Friedman, but he would bring on, like I said, he had Ronald Reagan, and they debated the Panama Canal, giving over the Panama Canal, but he was an intellectual guidepost for the conservative movement. Started National Review, and he would have these people that were polar opposites, and they were able to debate issues. There was a couple that him and Gore Vidal got into it, and it got pretty nasty between the two of them. But for the most part, he would respect the other side. They would have an intellectual conversation, and I think people that watched the show benefited from it. And wish we could get back to that in terms of the discourse.
Well, you talked about it earlier with J.D. Vance and the velvet glove, and how he'll hit you, but it's respectful, and he does it in a way that
Jake Tapper doesn't know how to handle him.
Yeah,
he did not know how to handle him, and he went right back at Jake, but he did it in a way that it was just perfect.
Yeah.
He's that's that. Like I said, that you're born with that. I don't think that's something you learn.
When if Trump does win tonight, J.D. Vance, I mean, does Nikki have a chance? Does somebody like Nikki have a chance?
And you never say never. I mean, look, who would say that, Gerald Malloy and Joe Jefferson and some of these guys will lose with the statistical advantage Democrats had, but never say never. But I don't look for me. I think the guy, look, 4 years is a long time. It's an eternity in politics, and he can make a lot of mistakes. But if his track that I've seen him on, he's going to be hard to deal with. He's smart. He's not going to sit there. If he can change his position and
the
be honest
biggest threat
about
to
it.
him in 28 is going to be the fundamentals. I mean, I believe that we're sitting at the top of the economic roller coaster here, and that the odds that whoever wins the presidency is going to have to deal with some serious economic problems are very high. And depending on how early in the presidency that strikes and what kind of recovery the nation is able to make, that could easily hand the presidency to the opposite party of whoever wins this evening.
I agree. It's almost always pocketbook issues, and in fact, 2020, proved that in some ways. But I agree with you. But I'll say that, just look, I've dabbled in real estate, and I had, and I've run enough businesses in my life to say, and talk to enough people that have a lot of money. I just think there's a lot of pent up money that's waiting for investment now. I mean, I think if Trump follows through on his promises, I think that there's a lot of hope for that, particularly bringing these business back. I mean, I think the idea of financial incentives for people to bring back business to this country is just if he does that, that could be huge.
I realized, that it is huge when I was covering his Mint Hill, North Carolina rally, because it was taking place in a PEX pipe manufacturing facility, which prior to his presidency was just a wholesaler where they would import the pipe from, I don't know where they were getting it, but the tariffs which he imposed meant that it was financially beneficial to produce it in America. And so now there's this ginormous factory where they're employing many people to produce that high quality products. It's Apollo PEX piping. If you've ever gone to Home Depot, it's what you're buying. And they're making it right there in Mint Hill, North Carolina.
Yeah, and it's I would say it's a national security issue too. It's not just an economic issue.
Yeah, or something like PEX pipe, and we can import that. But for microchips, which are essential to our medical devices, to our cars, to our computers, to our military hardware, and other base components of that nature, ball bearings, these are things that if you want to be a country that has an aggressive foreign policy like we do, you probably should be making at home.
Talk about our cell phones. I mean, you look at the manufacturers of a lot of the chips and equipment that goes into their cell phone technology. It's coming from China, my friend. And,
guys, I'm not going to say who said this, but a very top Democratic source has just sent me a text message. We got, all capitals, destroyed. We got destroyed. That's from a very top Democratic operative referring
nationally in South Carolina or both?
SC Democrats. SC Democrats got destroyed.
Yeah, and in some ways, like I really feel for some of these guys. Just talking about Gerald Malloy and Joe Jefferson, and I mean, I think it's fair to say some of these victories had very little to do with the candidates.
Yeah,
and I would put Kirkman in that bailiwick too, because I guarantee if Kirkman did in fact lose, which we still don't know what's going on there, but it's because Trump lost that district.
Yeah,
Trump lost that district.
Yeah,
and I would venture to say that these other districts where Democrats were upset, I bet you Trump won those districts. Here's Virginia.
We got Virginia going for Kamala Harris. She is the projected winner. 3.8 million votes in the bank. Kamala got 1.96 million, 51.1%. 13 electoral votes of Virginia going for Kamala Harris. Again, this was expected. Her projected margin, though, still, again, right around what they thought, 5%. So certainly we'll keep an eye on that as this thing continues to unfold. Still no call in Georgia, which is very interesting considering the numbers there. Still no call, obviously, in Pennsylvania, 82% of the vote in. No call in Wisconsin, where 70% of the vote is in, and no call in Michigan, where 42% of the vote is in. And Rick, we are still stuck at 53% of the vote in Arizona. Still no movement there as we await those.
Has Maricopa County reported?
That's a very good question.
I know they set the narrative weeks ago that they were going to take, there's some absurd amount of time to have the results. I think some election official there was quoted as saying like 10 days, which to me is, I don't know what they're doing, but.
Maricopa County has 55% of the vote in, and it is 51 to 49% Kamala. Very close in Maricopa County. That's where Phoenix is. That was big Democratic stronghold in the previous election, Dylan. Interesting to see how
fascinating place, Phoenix. Particularly as a sports fan, folks.
What was that?
I took my son to the March when we got to the Final Four. Yeah, the Gamecocks. Took him there. As a sports fan, it is a great town to be in because I think in the metro. I know I'm gonna get the numbers wrong. Is it 10 million people?
Yeah, it's a big place.
But it's sprawling. But but mostly senior community. But if you want to get a ticket to an NBA game or a professional baseball game or a football game, it is the easiest ticket to get in any town, because these people, they're big TV markets, but they're not going. I was able to get behind home plate and watch Bumgarner pitch, and my son got to see him pitch.
Well, and they lost their hockey team because nobody showed up. Their hockey team went up to Utah.
Golden State Warriors, I took him to see. We were able to see that one weekend, 5 days we were there. We were able to get tickets to every major sporting event, including seeing the Golden State Warriors play their last regular season game. So it's a cool place.
Yeah. Well, guys, here we are. It's coming up on midnight. We're 15 minutes away from midnight. Only one of the 7 swing states has been called at this point. Only one of the 7. So I guess the prediction of knowing tonight what would happen. We are 15 minutes away from tonight being over. Any thoughts, guys, on what to look for in the next couple hours here as these votes start coming in? We're hearing some of these states are going to take till tomorrow. Bakari even was saying that 3 to 5 p.m. tomorrow. Is that what you read, Dylan Nolan?
I believe that was AM, actually.
3 to 5 a.m. We're going to stay up this late? Hey, why not?
It's going to be interesting to see, because, I would, in a close race, even in the Gerald Malloy situation, 288 votes out of 50,000 cast. I don't know what Judge Jefferson went by. And by the way, I'm hearing that Kirkman probably did lose. Mm-hmm. These are all very close races. And so, I would say if these races are as close as it looks, and even some of these other races, there's going to be wrangling. It was one of the truly ridiculous things about this whole Trump conspiracy thing in Georgia. Every campaign I've ever been involved in where it's close, there's always this discussion of, are there bad votes out there? And, it's not illegal to have that discussion. So it's possible, as close as some of these races are, they're going to be litigated, and particularly if they've got lawyers on the ground arguing over certain ballots, that could become a process for sure.
What is interesting, though, that Georgia has not been called yet, and I'm trying to figure out the reason for that, because it looks, from my math, we've got more than 95% of the vote in. The projected Trump margin for the estimated remaining vote would put it at 2.6. Guys, why are they waiting to call this?
You were talking about Georgia there?
Yeah, even the New York Times, Georgia appears headed for a Trump victory at this point.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I haven't looked at the Times website this year. Do they still have the county reporting?
They break it down by county.
Where's Cobb County and all that? Is it?
DeKalb County has almost 95% of the vote in. It was 82-17 for Kamala. Fulton County, obviously another huge Democratic stronghold, 95% of the vote in, 72-27 for Kamala. So the big Atlanta counties have come in. There are a few, Cobb County, 95% of the vote in. A little better for Trump there this time, 57-42. But guys, what are we doing here?
Well, I will say the southern edge of Georgia, it's a much bigger state than you realize, and it's a different state. My farm was right on the edge of the Savannah. I don't know, 45 minutes outside of Savannah, but that whole southeastern quarter of the state is so rural, and it sprawls on forever. I mean, I'm wondering if maybe those are more rural votes that. Of course, as everything's electronic, I know these days, but particularly as it relates to some of Candler County, where my farm was, there wasn't much modern technology in Candler County. I mean, it is Metter, Georgia. They named it Metter because the railway engineer met his wife he met her there. Metter. So it's an interesting place, and so those rural. I would bet a lot of those votes are rural votes. And what are the Times predicting his margin would be over the current spread?
They're currently projecting a 2.6% Trump margin, which is in line with, it's a little under 3 right now. That's in line. But I pull in. There is one county in Georgia. I was just looking at the numbers here. That is totally unreported, 0% in. It is Jones County, Georgia. It's in the middle of dead center of the state. Trump won it last time with 67% of the vote, a little over 9,000 or just under 10,000 votes. Biden almost 5,000 votes. So that's the one county where there's nothing in. It would seem to me Trump's going to do pretty well there. There are a few other counties down in the south of Georgia, Clinch County. has gotten no results in at this point. We're going to check real quick and see what Clinch County did back in 2020. That was actually a county where Trump, again, won overwhelmingly, but a very small percentage of the vote. But it looks like a lot of these counties that are outstanding are Trump counties.
Well, that's what the whole thing. I mean, I know that the real clear average, but all of my friends that were polling in Georgia said that it was a much cleaner victory there than it would have been in North Carolina. So it's odd that it hadn't been called yet. It really is.
Yeah, it is. Dylan, we're still looking at multiple states here. In Nevada, they haven't even 0 votes in Nevada at this point. So we're still waiting on any results from Nevada. Arizona frozen at 53%. We are still getting steady upticks in the vote in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So we were continuing to track those. And of course, my New Hampshire call, still 75% of the vote in. That has not moved. My one miss. Come on, guys. You got to have one miss.
Well, and like I said, it was, if you were trying to throw a Hail Mary, that was the place to do it.
I was tempted, by all these conservative hope bringers to have Viego read. And I'm now glad that I did not let the siren song lure me off the ship.
I know it's this side of the Mason-Dixon line, but I'll say I think that state's been lost for a while now, just because the DC penetration.
You're exactly right about that.
It's
and it's the same thing. That was my calculus in New Hampshire. Is Massachusetts? I'm well aware of how Boston extends beyond the boundaries of Massachusetts, and demographically, I think it's just a real uphill battle for the folks in the hinterlands there in New Hampshire.
Yeah, and in Virginia, it used to be such a big military state too, and that carried us for a long, long time. And of course, downsizing and some of the new technologies with getting soldiers all over the world, it's becoming less and less. I know Portsmouth's still a big deal, but it's not. The state's not as big a military state as it used to be.
Kamala Harris has won New Jersey. This was a state that some Trump folks were.
What was her margin in New Jersey? Do you have that available?
Yeah, we're looking at 88% of the vote in New Jersey. Kamala Harris, 51.5%. Trump at 46.6%. Her projected margin in New Jersey is 6.5.
I would consider that a very respectable showing for Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a number 2 that I would have suspected they may have tried to play in it, But I know that they were he got outspent brutally. So, if the party apparatus had raised more money, I bet you they would have tried to play there.
Harris currently at 200 electoral votes. Trump at 230, 270 to win is what you need. So we are still awaiting states that are going to push somebody over the top. We may not get there for many hours, but trending right now in a much more positive direction for Donald Trump than I think certainly most of the mainstream outlets were calling it.
Will, as somebody who was an outspoken critic of many of Trump's policy failures in his first term, and Rick, as somebody who has extensive experience governing, how do you guys anticipate a second Trump term, just in terms of actually implementing policy? I mean, we're seeing that the Republicans are picking up in both the House and the Senate, so it appears that he'll have the ability to actually move some legislation. But also I think that he very ham-handedly wielded his power as the executive. I don't think he had people in place who were loyal to him or his agenda, and I don't think that he really understood. I mean, you could just see the way that he was violating the Administrative Procedure Act, doing things that somebody who understands how government works just wouldn't do. Do you think that, should he win a second term this evening, he's going to have learned from those mistakes?
I do. I mean, and I do. I mean, I just think because of the Rogan, if you listen to the Rogan interview, he talked about that, and how he picked some of the wrong people around him and wish he'd done that a little differently. But I just also think, there's something to, look, first of all, he's got a mandate. If he wins popular vote and he wins what it looks like is going to happen, I mean, there's not many politicians that are going to stand up to him, not on our side of the aisle. And so I think he's going to have a mandate to move. He needs to take that first year, but I do think he's going to learn from it. He's shown, look, he ran his campaign better this year. So I think he's shown that he can evolve and learn and adapt.
He exercised an extreme amount of discipline for Trump.
He did. He really did. And again, I mean, I can't understate how important that whole ballot security issue was. They were actually proactively protecting the ballot security measure, doing basic ballot security measures that last time they just didn't do it all. So hopefully that'll play off into the governing a bit too. And I kind of hope, J.D. Vance just seems like he's so damn smart, man. I
almost envision a role where Trump is the CEO and Vance could be the COO type. And obviously that's not how the Constitution lays out their authorities, but it certainly could be an informal arrangement where he takes power within the administration.
I'm going to be interested to see whether they also have a similar Freedom Caucus fight in the House and over the Speaker. I mean, that's going to be real interesting to see how that plays out, because now that you have all these there are going to be new Trump people coming in, or they're going to try to reshuffle the deck there. That's just a colossal waste of time for us. I would like us to pick a horse and just stick with it for a while and let Trump try to.
So do you view McCarthy's ouster as a mistake?
I'm a self-admit here that I don't follow. I didn't follow what he did. It looked to me like it was a kind of unreasonable. He was put in a very hard position, an unreasonable position, and it's ridiculous to have it so that they could call a vote at any one time to remove him. For a two-year term for Speaker, my goodness, pick a horse. If they don't do the job at the end of it, take them out. Then don't have it be a constant reshuffling of the deck. And it was obvious to me that I'm not going to sit here and defend McCarthy, but I think it was a ridiculous rule that he allowed to pass, and maybe he couldn't get speakership without it, but.
I don't think he could. That was my understanding.
Well, I mean, these guys need to bury their egos and at least give Trump a workable majority first, because midterm. Look, historically, midterms, the party in power of the presidency loses those midterm elections, so that's probably heading our way. I mean, history will repeat itself, and I hope they give him a chance to give him a good year or two chance to get his agenda done, because that's the best chance he has of actually getting something done. But.
Guys, I want to throw some blue wall numbers at you. The final polling numbers as of this morning, the averages that we're looking at, Trump was ahead in Pennsylvania by 0.4%. He was behind in Michigan by 0.4%. He was also behind in Wisconsin by 0.4%. Those were the polling averages coming into this morning. I want to share what the New York Times projected totals are, projected margins rather, for Trump. 1.9% in Wisconsin. 2.1% in Michigan, 2.2% in Pennsylvania. These are the projected margins based on the votes that are still out there. Hidden Trump vote, guys, if those numbers hold. And again, we've got 84% of the vote in the bank in Pennsylvania. We've got 76% of it in the bank. In Wisconsin, we got almost half of it, 47% in the bank in Michigan. This is the blue wall, guys, and it is, if not turning purple, getting a little red tint to it at the moment.
Yep, and I will say this, just caught up now, and I guess, I don't know if you said this earlier, Will, I mean, it looks like they definitely took control of the Senate, so that's good news.
Wow.
The GOP's officially won enough seats that have been declared, so that this is according to Fox News.
Wow. So even if Kamala Harris pulls a miracle in all three of these blue wall states and somehow manages to come back and defy these odds, nothing's going to get through, given the hyperpartisanship. Wouldn't you agree, Rick? I mean, do you think a Democrat president would get anything through a Republican Congress?
I think she'd have trouble getting through a conversation about getting legislation through.
How about the House? Where's the Republicans?
They have not. At least from what I'm seeing, there's nothing on that yet.
Well, we knew that Republicans were. Big call here, guys. Hawaii Hawaii goes for Kamala Harris. Make sure Jen's got that one. Poor Jen.
What about
she's been a trooper tonight with us. I was complimenting her earlier, man. Dylan, we just can't say enough good things about her.
It's a true privilege to get to work with her.
She's awesome. Rick, you got to meet Jen when she gets in here. You're gonna love her, man.
If she puts up with you, it has to be a pretty good.
Yeah, that's true. It takes a special type.
So you're talking about Hawaii. I wonder, is he going to give Tulsi something?
I would hope so.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I've been impressed with her too. By the way, she gave it to Kamala in that debate.
Oh yeah.
Oh Lord, man. She was so good.
Obliterated her on her civil justice. I mean, no one has called Kamala Harris out like that.
And I think that clip going extremely viral actually had a huge impact on this election, because I think that was what planted the seeds for millions of Black Americans feeling like that Kamala just doesn't represent them at all.
I don't disagree. I mean, I think that was, you had to point to that. So just a curiosity, Arizona, what is
still stuck at 53? I'm seeing no.
How many votes does it have cast?
1.8 million.
Wow. So every site I've gone to is saying that right now. Must be something going on with the equipment or something there.
Oh boy, Rick, don't say that. Oh boy.
Yeah, and it looks like even Fox is now they're laying out pretty much every state being all the swing states being leaning Trump.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. Let's see. It looks like the only outlier is it looks like the only outlier would be Pennsylvania at this point.
The only outlier being
in terms of them saying what at least on Fox what is leaning Trump.
Yeah, I mean even New York Times has got it leaning Trump.
They have him at a greater than 90% chance of becoming the 47th president.
Wow.
Yeah, I have, in my travels, I was talking to a Republican consultant, kind of a younger man, and he was, I don't work for Democrats. And of course, I've had to do some in my life, and just got a friendship and loyalty and other things. I've helped some Democrats, but it is not funny, watching some of my Democratic friends, I'm not going to say any names, lose their minds. And I told my wife, please make sure you're recording her. I want to see her meltdown. I really do. She's probably already doing it.
Well, as we look at that post-election landscape and the possibility of a Trump victory, I was asking Rick earlier, Dale, and I'll ask you, do you think it will be peaceful? Will we have a peaceful transition of power in the state, particularly if there is a mandate here, particularly if all of these swing states do go to Trump? Will we see a peaceful transition of power?
I believe that there is a protest industrial complex that was put on full display in 2020. I think that well-organized and funded machine will be reactivated throughout Trump's term. Will it impact the transition of power in a material way? I highly doubt that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I think, one of the things, it can become a political nightmare for them for the Democrats if they allow that to fester. I mean, I think most Americans, if he does in fact win, which it looks like he's going to, most Americans are going to want to give him a chance. Let him. He's won. Let's. That's the way most people think. It's just it's time we had the election now. Let's try to move forward. If they appear to be so obstructionist, they're not even giving him that opportunity. It's good. They're going to dig their graves even deeper, I think.
What about everyone that's promised to actually leave the country? I mean, that's not good.
Yeah, that's one of the ones.
They always say that, don't they?
I don't want to quote this, my Democratic friend. It's talking about leaving the country. It's exactly what they were talking about.
Oh wow!
And I'm sure that's probably some bourbon talking, but and I had one Democratic friend of mine just announced with authority, there is no effing way that Donald Trump's going to win this election, and it's going to be interesting to see how some of these people, some of the friends of mine, handle this whole defeat, because it looks like it's heading to be just a convincing and
I do think it's really nice, to speak to cameras with microphones in front of the public fairly regularly, just because it keeps your head somewhat grounded in reality. Mm-hmm. I think that you can very easily end up in the bubble of your Twitter follows or whatever, cable news channel you watch if you're never held accountable to reality. But I'm happy with the outcome this evening, but I would have told you that this race, if you're looking at every available metric, was on a knife's edge leading up till polls closed.
And that was my point to my Democratic friend. I said, man, I said, anybody that tells you they know exactly what's going to happen is out of their mind, because every I don't believe polling. He's going to lose. Well, no, that's not how this works. These polls are so close, and look there. I still say, even though Will's continuing to harp on this hidden Trump vote, they were close. I mean, the polls were right.
Let's look at the delta between the NYT prediction and the final aggregate. It is well within the margin of error. I would say it's like half of the margin of error. So the polls weren't even wrong, really.
Yeah,
if you're thinking statistically.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it's. These were. I mean, I'm just looking through some of my numbers I got earlier. I'm not seeing really anybody. I'm not seeing anybody that really is far off.
Speaking of that popular vote, Trump at 61.5 million now, 51% of the popular vote. Kamala Harris, 57.4 million votes, 47.6%. So Trump enjoying what appears to be over a 3% lead in the popular.
And it's just crazy when you look at like California, just such a lopsided number. I don't know what the percentage was in California now, but to be so populous a state, and if she loses a popular vote, man, it's just an utter failure.
Oh yeah,
I mean, because a big state like that with no rural race, just an unadulterated vote she got. It's amazing that she loses the popular vote. It's
Will Kamala Harris concede if these races are within these margins that we're talking about? I asked you guys earlier, are these margins going to be too big to rig? Let me ask the next question. If these hold, will she concede?
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't. If I were helping her as a candidate, I would want her to make at midnight. I mean, you're going to want to establish. If it gets much later, why would you're going to want to have a bigger viewership than that to give you once off into the sunset kind of move. I'm interested to see what kind of role Biden plays in. Do they have him trumping
I think
around
they saw him down in Mar-a-Lago this evening.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Do you think he makes a call to Kamala?
I forgot to tell you this. I hope my friend's not watching more. I'm hoping he's asleep. But so one of the conspiracy theories, one of the Trump derangement syndrome victims that I have at this friend of mine, he actually said to me, he goes, I heard Trump talk about the possibility of pardoning Biden's son. That tells me that fix is in. Biden's going to do in Kamala. So when someone,
that's a good conspiracy theory. I like that.
Well, it's not that. That's what I keep
Why
saying.
can't Biden just pardon his son? He's the president of the United States.
Well, I think. Well, first of all, I don't think he can't pardon him for a crime that he's not been convicted of yet. So some of the things are laid out there. And by the way, that's a really interesting legal debate because Ford pardoned Nixon without a conviction. So it was always a kind of an interesting thing. There was some discussion back then, and I read this a few years back, where there was actually discussion of that making that an illegal pardon. And the legal experts are absolutely split on that. Federal constitutional experts are absolutely split on that. The ones I've read anyway, as to whether a president has that power. So. And my feeling would be that knowing how aggressive prosecutors are, if somebody decides they want to go after them, that's not going to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's also we've seen in Georgia and New York, all it takes is one DA who's willing to play ball. And what are you going to do? You can only pardon as the president federal charges.
Yeah, and it's it's going to be interesting to see too what now happens with the Trump cases, assuming this thing happens. I mean, what's that New York judge going to do? Is he going to try to put the president-elect in jail? Think about that.
To this point,
he was ready to do it before.
Yeah,
for sure he was ready.
Somebody called him off.
At some point, doesn't the well-being of the country have to take over from these people? You just got to imagine at some point. And this prosecutor who went after past presidential candidates for election law violations and lost, and he's been the most aggressive close to the election. He should be removed. At some point, we got to worry about the stability of the country and having some debate about whether or not documents that were in Mar-a-Lago were some kind of national security threat. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, this is the special counsel who's been so far up Trump's ass, and they released some of his filings that tried to lay out the case. MSM did a very big treatment of those in October. Not a lot of juice on that. Trying to think of it, they threw everything but the kitchen sink at the guy. I mean, they really did.
Well, this was the same guy that went after Edwards, and lost. And the facts in Edwards' case were much better than against Trump. And it's just I don't know. I just think this whole lawfare thing is it's got to stop. And I hope for the good of the country. We
know a little bit about the lawfare here at FITSNews lately.
Oh, the lawsuits.
Well, and that's what I think. Please, if I ever sue someone for emotional damages, I want one of you to kick me in the fleshy area where my nuts used to be. Seriously, emotional damages, grow a pair. That's just pathetic. Emotional damages, my God.
They're sending that one to opposing counsel right now. Well, that's going to be played at your deposition. What did you mean by that, Mr. Folks? They'll probably play this part too. Hell, I would.
I said what I said, and I meant
I don't know.
it.
I got to be honest with you, well, folks. I don't know if much more emotional damage could be done to you.
Oh.
I'm teasing.
Yeah, I'm amazed we've gotten this far. It's 12 minutes after midnight, Rick, and we haven't really dove into any of our.
I think y'all got this all out.
I know my wife's watching. You better not talk about anything.
My wife is passed out.
Amy, my wife was so. I won't say excited, but she's been following this so much, and I don't see her going to sleep until there's some indication where at least where the early votes are going to be.
Yeah.
I still Arizona's got me a little nervous, man.
You're twitching over there in Arizona.
I really am. I'm shocked. Most of the polling I had heard of and seen really had that state being kind of easily in Trump's corner.
Well, we've been kind of frozen in time here. The blue wall has been coming in. A lot of numbers coming in from the blue wall. Nothing out west in a long time, and Georgia kind of frozen in time as we await this last roughly 5% of the vote in the state of Georgia, which again, very likely Republican, according to the New York Times. So all three now of the blue wall states are officially lean Republican. All three of them. That is huge, guys.
Yeah, that's by the way, I know we're in local races, but it definitely looks like at least I mean, until now, consistently, Kirkman Finley did not win.
That is a big loss.
Yeah, and it's like I said, I say this, and all jokes aside about when we were talking about Kirkman, I think in a race like this, there's an old adage that the top of the ticket catches a cold, the bottom catches pneumonia, and I think in Kirkman's district. And again, I haven't seen any numbers, but I would bet the farm that Trump did not win that House district. And so, I don't know that was avoidable. And I think the reverse is true of the other Democratic seats. I mean, that went. There's no way you can convince me that Joe Jefferson's district, outside of the inept Democratic Party operations, that was really I think Harriet Hallman, and I don't know her. I think she better understand that probably had very little to do with her and more to do with what was going on in the national political waves.
That's true.
I mean, your district is your destiny in this game.
Yeah, and it's funny what your ego will do to you. I mean, I think a lot of people think that they're, at me as a candidate, it's if I win this, it's all me, and sometimes that's not the case, particularly swing elections. I remember certainly in the Bush 2000 elections, we picked up a bunch of seats in the general election because of him and his wave at that point, and I think that's true here. And some of those seats went away the next cycle, so. I wouldn't get real comfortable if I were in some of these districts thinking that they have a mandate. They better get ready for some, particularly the House races where you got to run every 2 years. Like you said, well, these races are starting tomorrow, basically.
They really are. And guys, by the way, Ted Cruz has won the state of Texas. Andy's over there hooking them horns. Andy Fancher from the great state of Texas. He's been looking at those Texas races close tonight.
I would cut to camera 3, but it's dead.
You've been here for a while.
That's so unfortunate. He's the best looking one here.
What's the margin in Texas for Cruz? Was it 5 or 6 points?
Let's pull it real quick. I hadn't checked the margin in a while. I just saw that it was a race call. Trump won Texas. Wow. Big lead, guys.
11?
12.
Okay.
12.6% as of now. His final margin is looking like it's going to be 13%. That is amazing. It could be as high as 15%, as low as 13%, according again.
Does your trusting map have what Cruz's margin was there?
It probably does, but man, Let's pull that up real quick. I'll find that for you.
The reason I just think it's going to be another indication as to what I was talking about. Top catches a cold, bottom catches pneumonia, and the reverse is true. When you have a wave like that.
Wow, Ted Cruz up 10.
Oh, 10. Wow.
53.9 to 43.
So yeah, he outpulled his numbers. Everything I'd been hearing, he was like 5 or 6 points.
Yeah, no, he definitely did. And I think Florida and Texas both coming in much stronger pro-Trump than we were expecting. At least that I was expecting. I was expecting those to be in that single digit.
Yeah. Texas always, it goes through ebbs and flows. I was not really worried about Florida this year at all. I mean, maybe I was. Texas goes through ebbs and flows. They'll there's definitely a pendulum effect that goes on in Texas sometimes. And look, it's a dynamic state. We were talking about California and whether Reagan hurt California with immigration. I mean, Texas has got as big a problem as any state with it, and it's one of the more interesting states to follow. It just seems like there's a lot of. Every once in a while they'll upset the apple cart and elect a bunch of Democrats.
We are still waiting on results from Nevada, frozen in Arizona, but the blue wall keeps coming in and it keeps looking better for Trump, guys. This is all 3 states. We now have 78% of the vote in Michigan. Trump's still up 4. That's not a result. I picked him to win the state. I didn't think it would be by this margin. New York Times still calling that to be about a 1.9% margin for Trump. They give him a 74% chance of winning the state. That is significant. In Michigan, over half the vote is now in. Trump, 52.4%. Kamala Harris at 45.9%. Trump's final margin, looking at New York Times again, calling it 2.2% with a 67% chance of victory. The big one, obviously, that matters tremendously if Georgia goes his way. Pennsylvania, Trump 50.9%, Kamala 48.1%. Trump projected to win by 1.9% with a 76% chance of victory, guys. That's the latest from the blue wall.
So my daughter is up in New Jersey in musical theater school, and I know I'm digressing here, and I hope I don't interrupt the flow of your show, but
no.
I think she believes we may have discovered a connection that Dylan and I have.
Oh, really?
So my daughter believes that your girlfriend is what's your girlfriend's name?
Megan.
That how old is she?
She is, 22, 23.
So is she a theater?
I believe that her brother taught your daughter guitar for a number of years.
So my daughter is telling me that your girlfriend or fiance, is she your fiance?
Yes, sir.
That she was my daughter's double in Annie.
I did not know that.
My daughter played Molly in Annie.
It's a small world.
Wow.
It is. I'm real proud of her. She's she's going up there chasing her dream, and she getting into a musical theater program, particularly one as good as she is, like getting struck by lightning, and she's got talent. She's got a chance. She's going to take a shot, and I know that I think she's still watching, but we're real proud of her, and it's really cool. She's only been up there for a few months, but she's chasing her dream up there, and I know that it makes me feel old now, remembering her when she was little playing Molly and then Annie.
Guys, I predicted Republicans would win 3 new seats in the South Carolina Senate. They have officially won 4. The Republican caucus, 34 members in the upcoming.
Who was the new seat that?
Fernandez won. Stubbs, Zell, and Chaplin all won. So we are looking at.
Well, hats off to these guys, man. I mean, I tell you, to go against those odds. It's more than just a Democratic failure. You had to be a good candidate, and I'll never forget. It was a good friend of mine in the House who was from Orangeburg, Will McCain. He passed just a number of years ago. We used to call him Landslide McCain because he was facing 36, 37%. I think at one time it was a high of 40, and he would win by 50 votes pretty much every year. That's an accomplishment. Those candidates, even if the Democratic Party is as bad as they are, which they are, it's an impressive feat to take these seats.
Well, Rick Quinn, your friend Steve Benjamin has been reported in the crowd at the Kamala Harris party. The former Columbia mayor, Steve Benjamin, a big to-do in the Democratic national circles. He's partying with Kamala, or
One of the Democrats I helped, I ran his race for city council. And one of the reasons why Kirkman didn't like me.
You've had a lot of suggestions for the Democrats this evening. Maybe you should go back to running some more races for them, Rick.
No, I did it over over the years. And Steve and I had connections going back to our youth when we were, and I had, I pride myself on being loyal to my friends, and look, I think Steve at the time was good for the city, and but yeah, he's a big deal up there now, and I imagine wherever he goes, he's gonna be very successful.
So I didn't live in South Carolina for the majority of his time as the mayor, but I did really appreciate in 2020 during the George Floyd incidents how he handled that in Columbia.
Yeah,
he stepped up there, man, big time.
He did. We had less problems than any other city, and really, I mean, look at Charleston. Geez, man, but it's Columbia, and I hope I don't know what's going to happen with Rickman this year. I mean, I was very hopeful when he won the mayor's race, and I'm hoping that they need to get business for the city of Columbia back on track, and it's because it's becoming a real hard place to do business. And
Kirkman spoke to that when he came in our studio.
Yeah, he's right. Kirkman's right. Kirkman's right about a lot of things, and that's certainly one of them. Look, I as a property owner, I sold all the properties we had in Columbia. I'm not going to invest in the city of Columbia again until the tax situation is taken care of, and some of the other kind of the difficulty of doing business in the town. It's just not not conducive, and there, the election is growing by leaps and bounds because we have that pro business, pro family environment in which the city Columbia would get its act together.
Can we get Northwest Richland annexed into Lexington? How do we do that?
It's very difficult. It's funny when I told you about the school district fight we had where we were, they were trying to bring this area into Richland too. There was talk of that. There was talk. At the time I had just gotten elected. I won. I was like the dog that caught the car when I won my house race, and I looked into that. It's nearly impossible.
I'll tell you the other thing to do in Richland, you can move to Richland County. Literally having no other primary residence anywhere in the state can establish a primary residence. They tax you at 6% and make you prove.
Yeah,
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Oh, look, and that's part of it's a county issue. I had to sue the John Cloyd a few times based on some of his assessments of my property in terms of its value, and you shouldn't have to sue. Look, I as a business person in real estate, been involved in 3 lawsuits regarding how my property was valued or the zoning of that property.
Did you have emotional damages, Rick Quinn?
Well, I did. As soon as how Dick Harpootlian sued over the zoning of my building, and I had to fight over that for almost 4 years. I got some emotional damage, but people just want certainty when they're investing, and that doesn't exist in Columbia right now. It just doesn't, particularly if you're going to make a larger investment.
Well, and the argument for Kirkman Finley running for the South Carolina House was that Columbia needed a voice in the legislature to address some of those issues. Because Heather Bauer, is kind of the cartoon woke hero. She's not bringing anything back for Columbia.
True.
Not doing anything to help those issues you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think I would prefer to see Kirkman. And people like Kirkman just to continue to maybe run for city council and try to get the city going. I had 3 buildings and you were very aware of them. With the properties I had, it was $160,000 a year property taxes. $160,000 a year, and every day that goes by, more government buildings are being added, and the property tax base goes down. I mean, I'm fearful for the city in terms of just. They may be able to get major corporations with small businesses. It's going to end up being big box corporations and hedge funds that own property in the city of Columbia.
Guys, we got 80% of the vote in now in Wisconsin. Donald Trump's still up by more than 3 percentage points. His projected margin a little bit under 2%, but was it the Brett Favre endorsement, guys? I mean, what? The former Green Bay quarterback was a big Trump supporter up in the state of Wisconsin, which, again, this was one of the 2 swing states that Kamala Harris enjoyed a minuscule but small lead coming into tonight. not looking like it's going to go her way. None of these races are close to being called. It looks like Georgia, we are still waiting on.
Let's pivot back to Arizona. I just looked up the Gallego Lake results. Rick, I know you've been kind of tweaking out over Arizona here for the last couple of hours.
Well, it's a swing state, and it is. And I mean, I think for the most part, most of us that do what I do, and at least the talks I've had, Arizona was not ever in play in our minds. It's just making me nervous that it's.
But Gallego has consistently had much more of a polling advantage over Lake throughout this race than many folks outside of Arizona kind of understand. He seems to have some appeal to the voters that she just doesn't have. Do you think that? I know you hear that people below the top line of the ticket don't usually derive results at the top line. Do you think that there's a possibility that? I mean, he's got like an 8-point lead over her right now. And granted, it's not close enough. There's not enough votes in the call, but I think it could have had a significant impact.
Yeah, for sure. Particularly if the local Republican candidate. There's been for whatever reason, there's some disconnect with her. And,
I agree. You see it time and time again.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the elections are so dynamic, and these big national elections that occupy and suck the oxygen out of the room so much when it comes to, some of the coverage and attention of the voters. So everything affects it, but I just think, and my personal opinion is, I think Trump's going to win it, and I don't know that she heard it, but it didn't help. It didn't help, and it was really odd too. There was just a real disconnect with her that I never, on paper she should be a great candidate. I mean, used to be in front of the camera, well spoken, but just something's missing there.
Speaking of U.S. Senate races, and we've been talking a lot about Robert Cahaly and some of his predictions, but when he was in here the other night, he told us, Dylan, keep an eye on the Ohio U.S. Senate race, because if the Republican Moreno wins there, that could signify good things for Trump. Well, that race has been called. Bernie Moreno has defeated incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown in the Ohio Senate race. He's up by
win.
4% now. So Robert Cahaly called that race as one that we should keep an eye on, and it's one that has gone to the Republicans in the Ohio Senate. Trump, by the way, won Ohio by 11. So a lot of these states that NBC was telling me earlier today were going to be in play. I hate to keep harping on NBC. It wasn't just NBC. You just happened to have
it was a wise choice for me to put that on this morning. I want to get you fired up.
Yeah, I was.
We never put TV on in the office. We always just go to work. But
I'm going to tell you, I'm proud of Robert for what he's done. He was Dad and I worked with him on several races together at different times, and he's really made a name for himself in polling, which just shocks me, because it was never something I would have thought of him doing, and he's really put together a good product.
We talk about why are Democrats getting their asses kicked in South Carolina so often. One of the things I keep going back to is look at some of the amazing political minds that have come out of South Carolina. Let's talk about your dad. I mean, my God, one of the things that always amazed me. I would talk to Robert Cahaly and just say, oh, man, you're playing 3D chess on levels no one's ever played before in South Carolina. He'd always say, no. It's like Richard Quinn. He's like, I will never be playing at the level of Richard Quinn. He always had great things to say about your dad and his level of strategic ability in these races. But think about it. Your dad, Cahaly, obviously a little colorful character, Lee Atwater. Mm-hmm. I mean, definitely pushing the line on political correctness by today's standards, but man, the guy was a strategic genius. South Carolina's produced some incredible Republican consultants, right?
It has, and it's some good Democrat ones too, consultants too. I mean, Don Fowler was no slouch.
Yeah. And,
when you talking earlier too about what the Democratic Party's missing, that's what they're missing. But no, yeah, it's just looking back over the years, some of the evolution of the solid South, I think, was partially responsible for that. What I mean by that is, as I said, when I got in '87, it was a Democrat-controlled legislature, and the state environment, just in that switch of the party control, to me, that's part of what. And it's not just South Carolina; it's the solid South. That was part of what developed some of these characters, and that was certainly true of Lee. And look, Lee was the one that came up with South Carolina first. He wanted that to be the firewall for his candidate, and that's what that's been a big deal for the South Carolina, and that's also helped the fact that we're the first in the South, and it puts, we would from a business standpoint, which, we would live off the presidential elections and lose money as the year went by. And so, that was a big part of my dad's success, was the fact that he was able to get involved in those presidential races and helped his business and allowed him to kind of spread out and do other races because we could add employees and other things too. But yeah, it was a cool thing being around him, and South Carolina has been very fortunate. In fact, Down Fowler taught, just interesting to digress for a second, Fowler taught Lee. Atwater took a class from him. My father took a class from him. I took a class from him. He was a real institution.
He was national level strategist too. Mm-hmm. One of those guys that made a name for himself not only here but on the national stage as well. A lot of South Carolina politicos have done that.
Well, but and I guess Jamie Harrison gets his butt whipped by Lindsey Graham and goes up and takes over the National Democratic Party. I guess we have him to thank for some of this too.
Well, yes, we. It's funny. Mark Powell did a great column on the potential winners and losers in the race tonight, and he had Jamie Harrison up there.
This is going just about as well as the Senate race.
Yeah,
a lot of money spent and not a lot of results.
Rise to the level of your incompetence, I guess, and I'm just shocked of it. What the decision making was there to anoint him as the leader of their party. Who knows?
Well, they put Biden in. They rigged the primary here in South Carolina. Put I'm going to say the head of New Hampshire to make sure Biden had it greased. They greased the skids for the guy and then kick him out. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and you got to believe that's the thinking about where the Democrats head nationally now. I mean, you got to assume there's going to be a real upheaval in the National Democratic organization, right? Mm-hmm. You would think that pretty much everybody's going to be gone, right? I mean, how does the party chairman stay in control when you had a palace coup like they did and they picked a candidate that lost the popular vote and the electoral college?
Well, I am. The numbers we're seeing are certainly pointing to that, but I think one thing we've probably learned with bursting water pipes and burning ballot boxes this cycle, I mean, don't count anything before it's done. And in fact, in this day and age, I wouldn't count anything until the electoral college certifies.
I think there's going to be a lot of people who don't go to sleep tonight, especially on the right side of the aisle after 2020.
I mean, my goodness. But let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and assume that things continue in the vein that they're proceeding. Let's talk a little bit we talked about Trump's potential second term, but let's talk about some of the people that he might pick for some of these posts. And let's talk about some South Carolinians that could factor into his, potential cabinet. I mean, Tim Scott's somebody that was a big endorsement for him. When Tim Scott came out, I'm not saying it would have pushed Nikki over the edge or anything had Tim Scott gone with Nikki, but it would have helped her. But instead, he turned into an incredibly effective surrogate for Donald Trump. In fact, Trump always said that on the campaign trail that Tim Scott was better campaigning for him than he was for Tim Scott. Mm-hmm. And that if he had showed the sort of energy on his own behalf that he showed on behalf of Trump, he would have been a better candidate. Tim Scott got a future in the Trump administration, guys?
If he wants it. He was a hell of an advocate for Trump.
You got to wonder what he would be offered, though. That's the thing to me. And I've heard, the same rumors y'all have. I'm sure that he's definitely gone, regardless, is what I keep hearing. But I still would be shocked that he would give up a United States Senate seat. And if you give it up for a cabinet appointment, it better be a good one. You don't want to be the ambassador to Chile or something like that.
The Federated States of Micronesia.
But you think about South Carolina, though. I mean, I've heard rumors about Hugh Weathers being a potential appointment for Trump. What about Lindsey Graham? I mean, so if you're sitting here it's possible Henry McMaster could have some serious appointments to make.
He could. Absolutely.
That could have political ramifications for a long time, particularly if Tim Scott or Lindsey and I don't have any inside knowledge. I'm not saying Lindsey Graham would take a position, but I just think that that's a possibility out there that in state it's going to have reverberations if Trump picks a lot of people from South Carolina, and our governor may end up having a lot of say in who the new leadership for South Carolina is in Washington.
never has a political bet paid off more than Henry McMaster's endorsement of Donald Trump in 2016. And I go back, I tell whoever in the Trump world that will listen, I always tell them, I mean, guys, you had won that race before Henry McMaster endorsed you. Trump was going to win South Carolina that year, no matter what.
Well, look, in retrospect, I think you're right. Look, there was, look, I mean, I think it took more guts to Henry to endorse Trump than you're giving it.
I think it took guts for Henry to endorse Trump. Absolutely. I mean, even his own chief of staff, Trey Walker, called him out publicly.
It took a long time for those wounds to get healed, for sure.
But it was, I mean, it was a risk for McMaster, but it wasn't a risk that I'm saying impacted the race. But Trump has been just beyond loyal to McMaster. I mean, bailed him out.
Just in Henry's defense on that, Henry was one of the first statewide elected officials and establishment people to back Trump. And that I'm not looking. I'm not saying Henry was pivotal in getting Trump the nomination, but he came out quick and came out early. And but yeah, he has been very loyal, no question.
Yeah, I mean, that thing has paid dividends for Trump so many times over. I mean, it carried him to his first election in 2018, helped him in 2020 get reelected. So let me ask you about McMaster. He has said that he wants to stay in South Carolina, that this was the only job he ever wanted. 8 years later, he's been true to his word. Do you think the last 2 years here of his second term, obviously he served 2 years in Nikki's term, first full term, and now is in his second term. Do you think he stays the full 10 years, or do you think he takes something in Washington?
I do. I think he just.
You think he stays?
Yeah, yeah. And look, I don't. The last race I was involved in for Henry was 2016. So, just my knowing Henry as well as I do, I think it's his dream job being governor, and I would find it hard to believe he would do anything different.
Yeah,
and I think he's doing a great job at it too. I mean,
Rick.
I do.
Love Henry McMaster too much.
Well, I was state chairman of College Republicans when Henry was running, beating his head against the wall, running against Democrats. So I've known him a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You're a hard man to please, Will Fultz.
I mean, the guy is literally the poster child for intellectual incuriosity.
Intellectual incuriosity?
Yeah. I mean, show me the active mind with Henry McMaster. And here's another thing. Let me ask you this. He's the guy who signed up on that massive tax hike to restore that the pension fund when they should have been making it a defined
benefit.
Yeah.
And that was done. Greg Robert did that before Henry was even in office.
Henry signed the bill in 2017. It was the largest tax hike in South Carolina history.
So I think it's hard. I think it's hard to argue that a man that was party chairman, attorney general, and lieutenant governor and governor.
Oh, I think he was without talent. General.
That's without talent.
Fair enough.
Hey,
he had some good advisors, didn't he? Who was advising him all that time? You and your dad.
Yeah, up to 2016. That's the truth.
Gentlemen, we've got some movement. ABC has called Georgia.
Finally.
Well, there we go. That is one.
You're now one state away.
That is one of three that is incredibly important here. We have said all night, if Trump wins Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, that is the ball game. He's won two of them. We'll get Jenny to. Is Jen still alive? Did we break Jen? Poor Jen, man. She has kicked ass today. There it is. There it is. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. 16 electoral votes now in Trump's column. That'll put him up to 246, guys. 246. I think he's going to win Alaska. I think he's going to get those three. Those will help. We're getting close, Dylan Nolan. Getting very close here. By the way, my New Hampshire prediction, continuing to look a little better, guys. Continuing to look a little better.
51-48. How many? What's it?
Yeah, it's going to be a 3-point Kamala win, more than likely.
Well, which is And
I
we're,
reached too far.
I think that's where Atlas had it, maybe, or somebody. It's yeah. And look, like I said, that was if you were going to take a Hail Mary, that was one to take, for sure.
That was one to take. But look at that map. I mean, we are still. I mean, no surprises at this point. I mean, North Carolina and Georgia are state that Trump had a narrow lead in the pre-election polls coming into today. So those are two states that, I don't think they're surprising that we're calling them. Those were states, certainly Kamala Harris had a chance, certainly states that she put a lot of money and a lot of time into. But those were two states that are not surprising. However, this is the first flip. This is the first state that Joe Biden won in 2020 that Donald Trump has recaptured here in 2024. So that is significant. The first state to flip from the 2020 election.
Just New York Times. What's going on with Michigan there in terms of percent reporting? Is it up to? It's over 56%.
It is at 60% at the moment,
and he's still got a 6-point lead.
That is correct.
I got to believe that state's getting ready to be called soon.
Well, the final margin of victory projected by the New York Times for Trump in Michigan is 2.2%. Over 3.3 million ballots in the bank. Trump with at the moment anyway, 6% lead.
Yeah, if I'm Kamala's advisors, I'm sending my best figure out front to say it's going to be a long night. The vice president will speak to y'all tomorrow.
Yep.
Even if once she has the realization she's lost, don't you want to go out on prime time, or at least where you're going to be seen? Probably want to have a little time to prepare and be fresh. And I don't know that I'd want to come and concede it if I were the campaign at this point. I'd probably rather do it.
Pull a Hillary Clinton, get absolutely hammered, and do it the next day.
Well, there's no reason. Why if you're going to announce if you're going to concede, why wouldn't you want to do it under the best possible circumstances for yourself? And I just don't think it. Almost 1 o'clock in the morning, even if they were to call one of these states now, why would you want to do that?
Here's a question I got to ask you. Conceding in a race like this is such a delicate thing because, they've called this guy literally Hitler. They have, like you said, existential threat. The rhetoric that was directed at this man. How do you walk that back in any way, shape, or form? How do you then come out and talk about civility and the need for the country to come together? They can't do that this time, can they?
They can't. I agree, and that's going to be the hardest speech to write for her, particularly with her own limitations. But how do you come back from that? I agree. It's in this. You hope like I said before, you hope your better angels will take over and she'll do the best for the country and at least try to start that process of maybe bringing people together. But I don't know how they do that. And I think, I don't think they can. I think Trump derangement syndrome is real. I think they're all going to keep.
I just hope she delivers the speech that could be unburdened by the speech that happened.
Yeah, everybody aspirations.
Rick, tell us about this. Everybody writes 2 speeches on election night, don't they? Everybody writes 2 speeches.
Certainly for the big ones we did. Just as somebody that's trying to help somebody prepare to give a good, the best speech of their life or the worst speech. You want to think it through for sure. And somebody back there's got both. I would guarantee that. I would guarantee that.
Well, I'd love to see those.
And the real interesting thing is how fast Pluff and the other Obama experts run from any kind of accountability for their part in this mess.
Well, Dylan, you were talking about Obama's mood and facial expressions on the stage yesterday, talking about how he did not look like a man who was in receipt of positive polling numbers for his candidate of choice.
No, certainly he was. I don't remember. I believe it was in Michigan, but he looked fine when he was delivering his speech. But there were a number of candid photos captured of him while he was standing on the sidelines as other folks were speaking, and his facial expressions just didn't lie. You could tell exactly how he felt about the state of the race.
Well, no, it wasn't. But him and Michelle were they were one of the last to come out, and
he was absolutely trying to get some sort of primary set up. And I think that the problem was that these guys who are serious contenders didn't want to basically, ruin their chances in 28 because they saw that the fundamentals this cycle aren't there.
Yeah, in some ways, it would have been a trophy of blood for whoever got it. But you have to expect, though, particularly somebody that was, if you're trying to lead the Democratic Party through this whole issue, you would have wanted the best face for the party at that point, and she just clearly wasn't it. And I mean, and it's obvious that he knew that.
Obama's smart. Axelrod's smart. Carville's smart. These guys were all kind of in accordance about how to handle this situation, but it's clear that they don't have complete control over the party.
Or they did. So this is a good question. Would they have been better off? I don't know. I just think it would have been better for them to have a wholesale fight over it and get behind a Shapiro or somebody that has a clear ambition. To me, but
Shapiro and the governor of Kentucky would have made a heck of a ticket.
Yep. And but I still can't. I'm still mad as hell at Obama. So one of my favorite TV shows was Magnum PI, and he bought the mansion that was the set for Magnum PI and knocked it down.
Oh man,
guys, we've got an AP race call. Donald Trump has won Georgia officially by the Associated Press. We called it a moment ago in favor of Trump, but it has now been called by the Associated Press.
The big boys.
So, yep, that puts Donald Trump up to 246 electoral votes.
California voters approved a ballot initiative making shoplifting a felony for repeat offenders. So they are even pumping the brakes on the liberal lunacy in California.
Yeah, it seems like they've been walking back stuff like that for so long now in California. Every time
this was Prop 47 that they just reversed here. Infamous Prop 47, which basically legalized all of that criminal behavior, which is what has led to the downfall of great cities like San Francisco.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting. I think that's one of that was other canary in the coal mine when you have entertainers leaving the state like they were,
and businessmen, more importantly.
Oh yeah, I got to tell you, my man Elon's got to be pretty happy right now. I think what was he spending about $400 million? Is that what I heard the number was?
Spent a lot.
He spent that was my understanding. Is what I think he put an initial investment of 250 and ended up putting 150 more in.
And we're still waiting. That poor Cambria County, where all the drama was today, we're still waiting on a lot of those votes in Pennsylvania. 21% of the vote from that county in. It's one of the low reporting counties here in Pennsylvania. That was where those election irregularities were seen earlier today. Voting machines literally refusing to accept the ballots. Republican lawyers swooped in and got the voting deadline extended to 10.
See, I don't think that's something with what would not happen in 2020. I really don't.
Yeah, to intervene in this instance.
100%. And the things that happened, I think that showed they learned.
Or the entire county actually is that the tweets from people on his people found out about it and took action. It's a totally different scene from 2020.
I wonder what the other social media platforms, how they're going to handle this now, based on not only the getting exposed like they did, but now this election. I mean, if you're Facebook or Zuckerberg or some of these other people, aren't you going to try to change your ways a little bit to try to keep up with because I got to believe this is
It's funny because Zuckerberg was one of these guys who directly contributed to the steal in 2020.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was his, what was it, $100 million investment in using technology that had never really been used before in this way to specifically target which counties they needed to do what they did in, and made sure that it got done.
Yeah, but knowing the number of rich people I do, and I don't know anybody the wealth that they have, they like getting more of it, and I gotta imagine that some of them are going to at least have some kind of road to Damascus here, where they start trying to be free speech advocates again. Because YouTube's still shutting people down, right?
Oh yeah.
Have y'all ever bumped into that in your I mean,
oh yeah.
Before I started working here, I did, you can just say, independent news commentary videos on my own, and my most popular video from my channel that had amassed like tens of thousands of views, I don't even, might even hit 6 digits. I just got an email out of the blue from YouTube a couple of weeks ago, and it said, "We're not giving you a strike, but we're taking the video down for violating our misinformation policy." Now, what specifically did it violate? I have no clue. It was just a re-uploaded clip from Bill Gates giving a TED Talk, so a very public speech where he's talking about vaccines as a method of population control, which, you know, given the subsequent developments years after he gave that speech, are certainly questionable. But I didn't make any misleading edits to this thing. I provided it with his full context. And yeah, after being on the platform and being a very successfully performing video, poof. And that was just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you know, it's what's been really kind of interesting to me is these lawsuits now where they have public officials where they can't block people or on some of the social media outlets, and you're basically saying it's part of their public office and therefore part of the public square. I wonder why that doesn't work in reverse. You know, because it's just, why aren't these entities being? Why? Of course, I know why. You know, they gave them all these great exclusions in the federal law, which I hope they revisit that. But you know, so they can be sued when they do stuff like that. But it just seems like that ought to apply to them too. If an elected official can't block somebody, or you know, that's my understanding. What's happening, particularly on
Not from your official account. If you have an account that you are using to disseminate public information to your constituents, you can't block your constituent. But if you have a personal political account, you can block them. Like, for example, Rick Quinn for U.S. Senate. Boy, that's got a good ring to it, Rick. Rick Quinn for U.S. Senate. I'm kidding.
No.
That account could, if it's your political campaign account, you can do whatever you want with it. Rick Quinn, U.S. Senate official account, you couldn't block somebody.
Yeah, I guess my point being is they made the public square argument for that instance, why wouldn't that apply the reverse? In other words, his video, why are they allowed to block something that is if it's a public square? In other words, it's just they're having their cake and eating it too from a legal standpoint. I just don't understand how they get away with it, other than just the fact that they passed all these exclusions. And you know, Lindsey said once or twice that he was going to push to get rid of all those bills that allowed them to have this free access. Gosh, I hope that's one of the things they do when they get that.
Well, as soon as we can get off of it, we're getting off of it. I mean, X has been
for the longest time, you know, it was the public square, but now there is actually an alternative public square here on X. And in many ways, X is becoming a better video platform than YouTube. The vast majority of people who watch videos watch them on their cell phones. And on the YouTube app, unless you pay them, if you close out the app within like 5 seconds, the video stops playing. Whereas X, you can check your emails and have X completely closed. And if you're watching a video, and by the way, by watch, most people mean listen. The vast majority of people that watch videos don't actually watch them, even though we spend thousands of dollars on these cameras. So you can multitask, which you can't do on YouTube without paying them. And then you can close the app completely and close your phone and like go for a run, and it will still play.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's objectively a better platform. And I think once they work out monetization so that people can make more money, even if it's just marginally more than they can on YouTube, they could see a huge influx of video creators.
And he talked about that you know, if he ever is interviewed, I try to listen to him. He's been talking about that increasingly, that they have, that's their plan, is to be able to do videos even better than YouTube. And of course, one of the things I didn't know this, but apparently you can even watch it on your smart TV now. You can download the X app and watch it as like a TV streaming program almost. So
they're getting really serious about it, which is, I love the medium of making videos for YouTube. I grew up in the age of YouTube. I don't own a TV. If I want to watch content that's videos, I watch it on like my phone. And so I always felt betrayed by YouTube when they started doing all this censorious crap. Now, I mean, they always did it, but it really got bad in the last couple of years. And so I was kind of like, man, as somebody who's a fan of this medium and creates it for a living, like, this really stinks. So having this new option out there, I really hope that Elon continues to pour money into it because YouTube is a great product. They started the genre. It's a really well-developed product and mature product, but Elon's been making leaps and bounds here in just like the last half a year. So if he continues improving at this rate, in a couple of years, he'll have a better product.
Yeah, it's I have YouTube TV. I cut the cord a while back, and I'm very pleased with that product. But it's kind of
YouTube TV is more of a cable competitor, though, than it is. Like YouTube Premium and YouTube TV are completely different things.
Yeah, and my son is and my daughter both watch so many things on YouTube. And in fact, it's weird. Some of the stuff that I watch on the regular YouTube is it's because they get it quicker than some of the other, even the streaming services like Peacock or whatever. A lot of times the content creators will have it on have their stuff on faster on YouTube than they do on the streaming services. So, but yeah, particularly my fantasy football shows, you can get those right away on YouTube. But something like Peacock, when you want to watch the Matthew Berry show, it takes them forever to post it.
Yeah, Rick Quinn had his fantasy football radio on the other day.
That's my secret.
Getting that fantasy football advice.
In fact, lugubrious was one of the words that one of the announcers there's a guy named the guru, the fantasy guru. He says lugubrious once a day.
I don't like him. We're getting some results in Nevada, guys. One of the 7 swing states finally starting to get some results in Nevada. Early going, 3% of the vote in. Trump 71-27, but obviously that race is going to get very, very close very soon. It'll be within that, 2 to 3, more than likely margin. But we'll keep an eye on that. Arizona, Rick Quinn, a few more votes in Arizona. Right. Not a lot, but we are now up to a little over 928,000 votes for Donald Trump, 49.9%. Kamala Harris at 915,000 votes, 49.2%. So still
She's 1/10 of a point.
Very close, but again, 54% of the vote in. We're still waiting.
What is the time? Is the Times change their projection over what she?
Not at all. They're still projecting it to be a Trump win by 4.2%. So we are now looking at the number of states that are going to be called. Alaska really is the only one I think that we can say with certainty it's going to be for Trump, no doubt about that one. But we now have 7 states left, 8 states left. We're getting down to it, guys.
Harris campaign co-chair Cedric Richmond has just come out and announced that she'll deliver a speech on Wednesday.
There you go. As expected. As expected.
I think it's a smart move regardless of their intentions, that you don't want to do it at 1 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Not unless you never want to talk to the public again. If you're the loser, that's your last shot.
It really is. It really is. And you know what, Dylan, you were talking about her closing argument, the one that Biden stepped on. How she was giving a really good speech. You said you were impressed by her messaging and felt like she was hitting the right buttons.
Yeah, no, I feel like her campaign has struggled with consistent messaging. But I think that they found the right thing to go for there at the end. Obviously, it was trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, but the Band-Aid was a good Band-Aid, albeit there was then another bullet hole applied directly on top of the first one. So,
well, I'll be honest. I was watching a lot of the Kamala Harris ads toward the last week of the race. They were good. You had a lot of good old boys talking about Trump giving tax breaks for billionaires, but Kamala was going to give tax cuts to me. Those were good, solid ads. Also, the ad that I think was the best ad of the cycle, and maybe the results are going to prove me wrong, but the Republican women going into the voting booth with their husbands, everyone in the MAGA gear, but when the girls get in that voting booth, they look at each other. That was a great ad. They look at each other and wink and vote.
I'll be very interested to see how women voted in this election.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's I found it kind of sitting. If I were a woman, I would.
I know a lot of female Trump supporters and people who, by the way, weren't they're not Trump people. They're just people who in this election cycle are supporting Trump.
My wife would never worry about telling me who she's going to vote for. She would tell me and be
right.
I don't know. It just seems kind of condescending to me. But I hear what you're saying. It had a cuteness to it.
It was memorable. Hey, look, your family, Rick, cut some of the most inventive ads.
Yeah,
how important is that these days? Back in the old days, those TV ads were critical.
Lieutenant Governor Boots, the Bulldog. That's what did it. That was my dad and my sister's idea. Was to do the Bulldogs, and that he got outspent for that. And that the cuteness and humor it's really good to end on it if you can, particularly on TV. If you can come up with a cute and humorous ad, it's a much better way to end a campaign than attacks, or particularly if it's even a marginal race that you can get a few points out of it for sure.
The Bulldog was the smartest one in the shot too. I'm sorry, Governor. I'm sorry.
Are you really?
No. He's a caricature. Seriously, he's a caricature. He's a status quo hack who's just a freaking caricature. He's got his little 1990s 4-point pocket hanky. He's got hair like.
So it's his style. It's his style you don't like?
No, it's his utter failure to advance anything resembling free market, low tax, pro school choice policy. I mean, I think he's a placeholder. He likes to kiss babies and be governor. He likes to live in the mansion and have people over for.
Now you are being a little bit tad hypocritical there. Didn't you just say earlier that the best president ever was somebody that didn't say anything?
Well, the problem
seems to be some inconsistency there, Mr. Folks.
Well,
no, but it's look, and I've already said I think our party has kind of we lost our way when it came to the tax issue for sure. I mean, we need to get. They need to take this mandate if you see it that way and do something with it for sure.
Well, McMaster's father, I will point this out, he was one of the most brilliant men in John Greg McMaster, just a brilliant guy, and had 6 kids. Apparently, each one of them got an equal portion of his intelligence.
It's kind of like your pops with you.
No,
didn't you go to church with him?
Yeah, man.
You went to First Pres, right?
I mean, look, he's governor for 10 years, and what's he done? What's he done? Yeah, things are marginally better, but our schools still suck. Our roads still suck. Our people are still poor. I'm sorry. In the immortal words of Andre Ice Cold 3000, I'm just being honest.
Gosh, that pop culture got over me. What is that?
If I can step in, I think that your point about Henry being a fighter taking this state from blue to red, nobody can ever take that away from him. But I think Will makes a very good point. And he's been he's at the left of power here for long enough and there's ostensibly other people who would agree that the tax issue should be at least improved by now. I mean, what's your understanding of why that hasn't happened?
I think some of it's been, there was a period there where they had a pretty stagnant budget for a long period of time, and so there was some.
And this is a post-financial crisis period.
Yeah, heck, the last, I guess 3, 4, 5 years that I was involved in the budgeting process, it was flat. It was a flatline budget, and it didn't reduce because we always did our budget based on estimates. So what would happen would be the estimate would be lower, and so it would be kind of flat, and so there was this pent-up demand, so to speak, of the agencies, and so I think that was part of it. But also, look, some of these guys become advocates for the agencies as opposed to advocates for responsible spending. But some of it was just that there was a lot of when the big money finally came in, there were a lot of things that the agency had been pushing for years, and I think the legislature went along with that. And but I think I've said before. I mean, I think there was one year where they spent almost $1 billion in new money. I mean, it's been real easy to slide some money back to the people.
And Henry has not used his veto pen to stop any of that reckless spending. He hadn't lifted his veto pen hardly at all. The other thing I would point out about the guy, I'll give him credit. He said some great stuff about judicial reform, some great stuff calling the lawmakers out saying they needed to do more. But here's the problem. He said that in a letter to them after they sent him a bill. My advice would be, if you really want to impact the process, say it at the beginning. Come out at the beginning of the process and tell them, this is what I want. I'm the governor. I want some appointment power. I want a role in the process. Don't wait till the end of it. I mean, it's pointless at that point. I just think he's been a lazy, intellectually incurious chief executive.
As opposed to sending 140 vetoes over and having watched them all be overridden, like that kind of thing.
No, you're right. That's fair.
But I think there's always a balance when you're in that position. Just watching, let's see, Riley, Campbell. I'm gonna forget somebody. Hodges, Beasley. I know 5 or 6 governors, 7 governors I've dealt with, and I think there's always a balance, and nobody's really struck it well. Between proving your point with your veto pen versus being somebody that can actually get along and do something. Campbell did it the best, in my opinion. Campbell did it the best.
I think you're right about that.
And but just so that comment you made about Mark Sanford, everybody's got feet of clay when it comes to and their own shortcomings when it comes to the serving as governor. But there's a balance there. And look, honestly, I've been kind of out of the loop a little bit, obviously, over the last few years. But I did notice the budget creeping up. General fund going up like it did.
And again, that's not his fault. I mean, that's not his fault. But again, if you come out and aggressively challenge some of that overspending on the front end, try to build a coalition, communicate with those guys and say, look, I'm going to veto this. Help me out here. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a moment. Guys, real quick, some votes, a lot of votes are in Nevada while we sit and wait for Arizona to take its thumb out of its ass. Nevada has suddenly posted 68% of its votes. Donald Trump, 50.9% in Nevada. Kamala Harris, 47.5%. The New York Times projecting a 2.8% Trump victory. They still have it as up. I'd take that back. 2.8% projected Trump win, and it is now leaning Trump. The state of Nevada. This is one that who let's bring these maps up. Can we bring these maps up? I'm not going to humble brag yet, but I think I had Nevada for Trump, didn't I?
I think no tax on tips was a brilliant move on Trump's part.
Well, we won't.
Yeah. I think I had it for. Let's go over to New Hampshire. Where were we on that?
Oh man, calling me out. I missed that one. I did miss that. 88% of the vote in. Trump is down 3. I'm gonna miss that one.
Michigan was the one that I was saying might go Harris, and doesn't look like just what I can see on my phone. I don't have the New York Times pulled up, but
I will fully confess that
looks like it's a wrap for Trump. I mean, he's 6 points up.
I mean, when I bought into that hidden vote and went ahead and projected all those red states, it could have easily gone the other way. I mean, this was one of those races. It just could have.
I would not have been surprised.
Yeah,
they did it in 2020.
I wouldn't have been either. Guys, Pennsylvania getting close. 93% of the vote in. Trump is still projected to win it by 2%. He is currently up 51.2 to 47.8. 6.5 million ballots. 6.5 million ballots. He's up by more than 200,000 at this point.
It's interesting looking anecdotally. I was just trying to look at some of the numbers in some of the districts that reported locally. It looks like the turnout in South Carolina was, and I know every district's going to be different, but the ones I'm looking at now, it looks like it was pretty close to 2020.
Really?
Yeah. In terms of absolute numbers, there may be different people involved, and I think that clearly there were different voters. I think there was fewer blacks and more white voters, as I've been saying all night. But that's interesting to me that the 2020. I had a lot of the folks that run races here in South Carolina were saying this was going to be the largest turnout ever. I'm going to be curious to see what South Carolina's total
I think
votes cast were.
Rick, you're onto something here. We're looking at numbers right now. 2.46 million ballots cast. That is a 73.59% voter turnout, and we still have about 55 precincts still out in 2 different counties. So that is actually a little bit lower than 2020. How about that? Maybe that's
I think we're going to find when and I don't I ended up buying the statewide voter file as soon as it's available, and I really use that to kind of look at the turnout by precinct, because that's really the most efficient way. Because when you look at the websites and the data they give at the election commission, it's never exactly from like racial perspectives and the numbers. You never really get a full appreciation of it until you get that big voter file and you can actually go through it. But I'm going to be fascinated to see where African American turnout was low, and really was it that African American turnout was low, or was there just higher white turnout that appeared that kind of diluted the black vote in some of these races? But that's going to be interesting.
Well, and also, what did the black vote do?
Yes, and look, there is no other conclusion that I can come to in some of these districts when you look in, close to 50% in some of these races, minority percentages.
I haven't seen anything specific to the black vote, but I have seen on network television some reports that Latino men have shifted as many as 10 points towards Trump this cycle.
Wow.
Based off of exit polling.
Unbelievable. 2.53 million voters last time out of 3.5 million registered. So that was a 72% turnout last cycle. And as I mentioned a moment ago, here in this cycle, we are at 2.46 million out of 3.34. So there are actually a few fewer registered voters this cycle. So the universe is smaller. Rick, is that weird considering how many people have been coming to South Carolina?
Yeah, and they'll end up making, they'll end up making voters inactive on the file and still keep their name sometimes too. So it depends on what you're looking at, if it's apples to apples. But yeah, my guess is that the turnout's going to be about, if you look, once we look at it, it's going to be about the same as it was in 2020, but just different people.
Well, obviously we start talking as soon as this race is over. There's the statewide races that are coming up in 2026, but I mean, the first in the South Circus, get ready. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump can't run again. He wins this election, he'll be president for 4 years, but he is term limited. Having already served one term previously, he cannot run for a second term after this. First in the South, Rick, coming back.
Yeah, and it's going to be real interesting to see. I mean, I think, like I say, 4 years is an eternity, and when you really start looking at this, I wonder how many people are going to want to charge the windmill on that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, in other words, if Vance appears to be on the track, if he stays on the track he appears to be on, I wonder how many people are going to charge the windmill and try to go against what's going to be the machine now. You got to assume he's going to take over the mantle, right?
Well, and also think about the potential role that Vance is going to play in this administration. I mean, Trump is a guy who certainly is going to leverage this great talent. Vance is going to have a very muscular role in this administration. Don't you guys agree?
I would certainly think that. And, you're talking about the machine. One of the biggest questions for me tonight was, obviously whether Trump is going to win this election, but whether MAGA becomes the Republican Party. Because, I mean, we saw in this primary cycle, the old Republican Party was trying to claw its way back into power. And 4 more years of MAGA, and then another guaranteed MAGA candidate who is pretty much going to have an extreme upper hand. I mean, we don't know what the next 4 years will hold, but we could probably assume that the codification of MAGA into the DNA of the Republican Party, and they have some major changes to free trade, to America's role in the world. I mean, these are not minute policy positions. This is a radical change in the Republican Party. And it looks like that's going to be the way it is for quite some time now. And personally, I'm okay with that. But there's a lot of people in the GOP who clearly aren't.
But they sure didn't show up to vote against Trump.
Or for Harris.
Yeah.
And how many of those never Trumpers were front and center for Trump now? I love watching Karl Rove talk like he's for Trump this year when he was doing nothing but trying to beat him in 2016. So,
well, and George W. Bush, very quiet.
Well, not his daughters.
Well,
all endorsing Kamala.
Hey yo!
I guess one of them wants to get another shot on the Today Show. So,
do you think Trump will offer Nikki Haley a spot in his administration? Dylan.
Considering the reports that he was very serious about offering her the vice presidential role, I don't think it's off the table. Personally, I hope that she can keep up her house on Kiowa.
There you go. What about a guy like Alan Wilson? Does he have? I mean, he's been very aggressive on Trump issues. He's been, went up to New York when Trump was on trial. He's been one of Trump's favorite AGs. Is he a potential attorney general?
I haven't heard of anything about that at all. And of course, one of the interesting figures in this is Ed McMullen.
Yeah,
and he's going to have a lot of say in this. I mean, I don't think anybody. It's hard to argue that anybody. He's got the best chance of getting Trump's ear of anybody from South Carolina for sure. And Henry probably would be a close second even to that. I mean, my understanding is Ed was even down there in Mar-a-Lago. Been traveling with the campaign, so I think he's going to have a lot to say about that. But I think it's hard, because taking a cabinet role, that's kind of your sunsetting.
Yeah,
you don't see a lot of cabinet members become candidates for future office, at least not high level candidate. But I would put, I don't. Again, I want to reiterate. I've never spoken to Lindsey, and maybe there may be nothing to it. But Lindsey's going to be 70 this year. I think it's next. Yeah, I think that's right. 70 coming up. If you're him,
nice way to go out.
Take the attorney general. I mean, he's look at Lindsey's not so much as a lawyer. He was, he had a very well-regarded time as a lawyer in the JAG and as a prosecutor, and so I think he's got the background for it. I mean, why not?
Well, I'd love to see him stop talking about invading every other country in the world for 5 minutes. So maybe make him AG. He'll quit talking about that.
Well, I just think that I think if you talk about South Carolina elected officials, that would be somebody that if you're 70 years old, I mean, clearly you've got more years behind you than in front of you. So why wouldn't you consider something like that?
Sure. But he and Trump are notorious frenemies. Where is their relationship?
I mean,
status?
What I'm told is, I think they're very close, and Trump will take a shot here and there, but I mean, they still go play golf once a month together, and they're very. I mean, I hear they talk a lot, and so I think if Lindsey wanted it, he's going to get it.
Yeah,
that's my view of it. But I know less than probably anybody in the room about it.
Here's another interesting thing to think about: Trump's positioning in terms of he got 3 on the court during his first term. Had Kamala Harris won, I think we would have seen some reorientation. Potentially court packing that has been suggested. Trump now another term, more than likely if these things hold. Will we see a Supreme Court, more Supreme Court nominations for Trump? Could Trump end up having 4? Maybe?
Yeah, that's one of my softest parts of my own knowledge base. I mean, who is in?
Sonia Sotomayor is doesn't have great health. I can't remember what exactly, but she has some sort of chronic illness and is getting up there in the years. That she's probably the most likely.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to try to hold on to that thing as long as she can to allow the next president, the next Democrat.
Ginsburg.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. That will be kind of an interesting thing, and I mean, I wonder. You start thinking about some of these other Democratic leaders, like what does Schumer do?
Yeah,
does he move on at some point? How old is that guy?
I tell you, watching that guy at the roast that Trump went to in New York, the Catholic roast,
brutal.
Watching Schumer listen to Trump's monologue was just classic.
Somebody ought to teach him to grill a hamburger if he moves on to a more civilian life. Has anyone seen this picture that I'm referencing here?
Mm-mm.
So I think it was Father's Day. He puts up a picture and he's like, this is the first time that anyone in my family, I think he's with his daughter, it's the first time anyone in my family's had a house that's not an apartment, and we're grilling for Father's Day. And he's trying to do the politician, doing the normal person thing. And he's got a raw frozen hamburger, but he's already put the freaking cheese on it, and he hasn't flipped the thing at all. And so everyone was lighting him up like, what the heck are you doing?
Well, folks, I think you better check Pennsylvania.
Guys, I knew we were getting close. Also, guys, New York Times is saying Trump has a 70% chance of winning Michigan, and get this, an 81% chance of winning Wisconsin.
They've now moved up to 95 for the election.
I think Pennsylvania just got called. So that should be
Oh
it.
boy, that would be. Now we've got 93% of the vote in. If that is,
The only outlier being Arizona.
Fox News just called it.
oh boy. So that's 2 race calls for Pennsylvania.
It's a route.
That's
Jen,
a game.
let's get it up. If she's, we can hang out a little longer. It's only 1:30.
Well,
Jen did say she was getting some beers, so she may have passed out.
yeah, she
Do
was
you know how to hop in there and do it, Andy?
I would do it if I could, but I'm doing good to work camera 1, 2, and 3 buttons over here.
There you go. Well, Pennsylvania for Trump, Jenny is she's worked hard, but that would get him up to boy, my South Carolina math is coming in here. 266.
Yeah, that in order for it to be over, Arizona and Nevada is going to have to get called, because I would doubt Michigan's going to be called tonight.
There it is. There it is.
She's sent me to win.
Who did that? Was that
Jennifer
you,
just did it. No,
Okay.
she's the only one that has access
She's
to it.
amazing. She is amazing.
where is she exactly?
She says I was on TikTok.
So she's doing this remotely from her
She's
house?
in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Moving here soon. We'll be here by hopefully the end of the year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Historic evening.
So yeah, Pennsylvania's got 90% in. Looks like that's three points there. Interesting. Wisconsin's getting close too.
Well, I think Trump's going to win Wisconsin. I think he's going to win Wisconsin. He's going to win Michigan.
So it's almost 90% reporting there. So, and he's got a 4-point lead.
Guys, I think he's going to win all 7 swing states.
Looks like it.
All 7 swing states. Andy, whose map had Trump winning all 7 swing states?
Stand by.
Whose
Gosh,
map?
I knew I
Whose
should
map
have.
had that?
Michigan. I missed it by Michigan. Well, wait. Are you referring to the New Hampshire map?
Oh,
Is that-
man.
that's
the
what-
one-
Dylan, how do I do this?
So we have
Don't
the
worry
same
about
number of
it.
states. We call the
How
same
do I
number of
do it?
states. Well, folks, we call the same number of states.
No, I mean, look, everybody here called what's happened tonight. I mean, everybody here called a Trump victory. I didn't have him.
My call was really Trump NCGA PA, and then the other ones I was kind of like,
Yeah, at that point, decision.
just because in my reporting I had been focusing on North Carolina and Georgia, so I felt like I understood the dynamics of the race there pretty well. And Pennsylvania, obviously, everybody's been obsessing over. But then the other ones, I kind of was asking myself, well, if you're assuming he's going to carry Pennsylvania, then why shouldn't that logic carry through to these other states? But I guess I was just hedging.
Yeah, New York Times now giving Trump more than a 95% chance of winning Pennsylvania with a 2.3% margin. I don't know why they hadn't called it.
So how many Pennsylvania? That puts him how many votes away from 270?
4. He is with Pennsylvania in the column, he is at 266 electoral votes. He needs 4 more. He's going to
That's exactly enough when New Hampshire rolls in. Don't go over 270.
He's going to get 3 of them from Alaska. You're very funny, Rick Quinn. You're a very funny guy.
No, but just looking at some of these other states, I mean, Wisconsin's at 87% reporting, so that's got to be close to getting called. And then Nevada it's only 75% reporting, but it's a 4-point lead there, for gosh sakes. You got to expect either Nevada or Wisconsin's going to get called soon.
You know who the happiest person in the country right now is next to Donald Trump? Joe Biden.
He's asleep.
They woke him up. Come on, they woke him up.
And I made it obvious that I think Elon Musk is probably up there pretty good.
Oh,
He made look here. I mean, he made a big. It's his dream of putting humans on other planets was at risk here. I mean, because you got to know and believe you me, those Democrats would have cut him quick for Bezos, even though he has a much better product in the rocket than the.
Weren't you telling a story about him, like the rocket that he launched? If that rocket had.
Yeah, he was down to one last rocket. He was out of money. If that rocket didn't make it, he was going to lose his contract. And and he went and met with the Google owner of Google at the time, saying, "You got to keep Tesla alive for me if this rocket goes down." And there's a very famous video of him watching that rocket successfully go, and where the whole world changed for him. And he's brought America back, and we were having to get our rockets from Russia.
Yeah,
and so it's
we're having to use Russian rockets to get to the space station.
Look here, he's having to go save astronauts in a couple months here. They've been stuck up there because they can't get NASA can't get their own rockets up. So his rockets
responsible for that. Boeing.
Mm.
Can we get Elon Musk to run Boeing for a little while?
It's really seemed to me like this whole dynamic with the government messing with him, it's really been like an Atlas Shrugged type dynamic. Who is John Galt? Who is Elon Musk? Where you have these unsuccessful firms or firms that were once successful that were completely hollowed out by decades of bureaucracy. That would be Boeing. And then you've got Musk, who's this guy who's just out here pushing the boundaries on like 5 different fields at once, who's facing all sorts of bureaucratic attacks, specifically from the firms that he's bailing out when their space vehicles fail.
Absolutely. The other irony in this is that Elon Musk was under threat of deportation if Kamala Harris won. It's kind of ironic, the administration that lets 10 million illegal aliens in, no problem. Oh, we're going to deport the one guy bringing in all these jobs.
Well, they threatened to deport us too, Will.
Well,
But the interesting thing, just about Musk and kind of the culture that he brings to, which I'm hoping Trump is going to follow through and let him head up this efficiency committee that he was talking about. But just the little, and the spacesuits, the astronauts, they had these little radios, and they were spending $8 million a radio for each suit, $8 million, and he got it down to like 10 grand. And so it's the things that the guy has done. I'm just really hoping that Trump gives him a real shot at. Because I think that was what he talked about, right? It was making kind of the efficiencies are for government spending.
Well, guys, Jen has got it up. We have a state call, and Rick Quinn, I know you're going to give me some grief about it. The state of New Hampshire has been called for Kamala Harris.
So close.
She has won the state.
So close.
51% of the vote, Trump at 48.1. She will end up winning it by 2.8%, according to the New York Times. So I missed one.
Interesting. So have they called Alaska yet? My wife's let me know now that if Alaska is called, it'll bring Trump over 270.
Alaska has 28% of the vote in, Trump 57, Kamala 39. I mean, he's going to win it.
He's going to win it. So he's already there. Once Alaska, my wife brought up the very good point. Once Alaska reports, it's done. Right?
Wow. Well, I've got Pennsylvania with Pennsylvania gets them at 266. No, you're right.
Alaska's only 3.
Yeah, Alaska's only 3. That'll get them right. One away. But
I guess one of the services that Amy's looking at is my wife's looking at it has them at 267.
Dylan, can you check on Bakari Sellers' Twitter now?
Man, somebody should do a wellness check.
Well, knowing Bakari, look, he tells the company line. I think he's going to be just.
We all love the guy.
He's going to be just fine.
It's well-meaning. It's well-meaning, Bakari.
He's a good dude, man.
And what I love about him is he's humble.
He's smooth though, man. I give him credit. We were at Hall's one night, and my wife is a huge Bakari Sellers fan. A little too huge of a Bakari Sellers fan for my personal taste, but man, he came up and did the whole kiss the hand. And, oh man, there were stars in her eyes.
I had a couple moments in my service that I'm just will be in my mind for as long as I live, and one of them was me and Bakari hugging it out when Clemente got killed, and was the night of when they brought him up for his laying in state up there. That was one of the things. One of these days I'm gonna write all of the little things that happened, but that would be one of right up there. One of my memories was just him and I crying together over that. I was a page with Clem, and when I got in the house, he was still paging, and so it Yeah. That was a moment me and Bakari shared that I think that was a bonding moment that I think he remembers it. I feel pretty certain.
Hell yeah, man.
What was the atmosphere like in the State House following that?
It was devastating. He was Clem was. I didn't agree with him on a single issue. He was a great guy and just a really nice person. And for that to happen to him, I think it just was a jarring kind of moment for everybody. And yeah, it was. That was one of the harder moments that I had there, for sure. I think a lot of people felt that way that knew him, everybody liked him. And then you add all the politics that happened after that with the, and the stress of that whole situation. But yeah, that was a watershed moment for sure. No question. But yeah, that was one of the rare times, it's the only time I've seen Bakari cry.
Yeah.
It was that day. So.
Yeah, I remember that was one of the first times that I felt real backlash for something that we had written, because we came out a couple of days later and called for the flag to come down, editorialized that the flag should come down, and lost a lot of, because Fitz had just sort of started getting into that, and we lost a lot of support when we did that.
Well, and look, man, it was part of what beat me, and when I voted to take it off the dome in 04, that was part of what I was knocking on doors, and I'd have people tell me that was they were going to vote against me for that. So
yeah,
that was and there's a big voting block out there that still smarting over that.
Well, I didn't like the way it went down. I mean, it was not a respectful process. I think a lot of the folks who had been promised a voice in that process, they got kind of steamrolled.
Yeah, I'll come aboard on that. They were lied to. We were supposed to have a 100% certainty of what was going to happen to it, and that was an important part of, and Russ a lot. It was he and I had an agreement, and when the vote happened, there were promises that were never followed through with, and it stinks, because it's a very complicated issue, and it has a lot of emotions to it, and it should have been handled better. I agree 100% on that. 100%.
Russell Lott's going to be one of 12 Democrats in the South Carolina Senate this coming January. Rick,
he will be my senator.
Yeah, he's going to have an interesting challenge. That district is. He better be picking a house in Lexington somewhere. Because I'll say, I think I may be wrong about this. I think it's 20% Richland County, 7% Lexington, and 10% Calhoun. So he's wagging the dog right now, and I think I'm not saying he was lucky because he's a great candidate, obviously, but being from an area that's only 10% of the district, I think he ought to consider relocating.
Well, and he was popped very aggressively toward the end of that race. Americans for Prosperity ran a ton of ads, dropped a ton of mail on him.
I received it.
Really targeting him for defeat. So his victory is also very interesting. You were talking about earlier about his pro-life record, how this was one of the only Democrats to cast pro-life votes, and obviously it didn't hurt him.
Yeah, no, I would virtually guarantee it helped him, because that community is very tight knit. The people that are actually care about it, you follow it, and look, the Democrats made it. They, in some ways, they shot themselves in the foot coming after him on that, because I think he had some Republican crossover against Dick for sure. The like I said earlier, the Irmo, St. Andrews, and Quahala and Saluda River Club areas there, and he. Them coming after him like he did, I think that caused some crossover that hurt Dick.
Let me ask you guys a question. We were talking about Biden earlier being the second happiest guy after Trump tonight. Let me ask you guys this. What does this electoral map look like if Biden had stayed in the race? Does it look the same? Does it look better? Does it look worse?
It's interesting to me. I mean, let's in a fantasy world here for a second. Let's assume that he had the bunker strategy again. And if they had just gone with that, I wonder what would have happened. I mean, certainly the access that the public had and the press had to the gaps and the other things that were going on, and I just think that was a miss. I'm not saying the outcome would have been different, but I think he might have been a better candidate had they gone to that mentality. I just noticed certain things that were just kind of almost seemed like they were trying to kill the guy. You know, he had if you ever watched some of the video of him walking from the helicopter to the White House, walking through this grassy, unlevel ground area, and it just was obvious the man was obviously, you know, having issues with his age. Why would you put him in that situation and put him in these? You know, I just wonder if they had done the bunker mentality and I'm not going to do the debate and kept him in the White House and under controlled environment. I wonder what would have happened.
And let MSNBC continue to tell us he was sharp as a tack.
The best Joe Biden there ever has been. Whew. Yeah. Does that Scarborough guy even have a sense of decency? He just needs to go ahead and quit. Hand his resignation in, for God's sakes.
Well, you know, they took him off the air briefly. And I can't remember exactly what moment it was in the race, but they were afraid he wouldn't be able to contain himself, and so didn't they mute him and his?
Was it after the debate, or was it after the coup, or was it after the assassination? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was after this.
I think it was the assassination.
Crazy moments.
Well, he's obviously a horse's ass. And Mika Presents has got to be one of the dumbest people ever to be in front of a television set or television camera. Yeah, and you think about Rachel Maddow. It's true she's making like $30 million a year for no ratings and an idiot. You just wonder when is the free market going to knock out MSNBC and some of these other.
Hey, the sooner the better for us. I mean, we'll take that. Well, man, I'll tell you one thing, man. If we ever do this again, Rick, you are fully on this panel. I mean, this is a panel now. You're on it. Because, I mean, this is amazing. The insight, the history, the anecdotes.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I've enjoyed it. It's been a good fun. It's been fun. You know, you and I had a lot of past and a lot of fun together back when our younger days. It's nice to.
Well, can I tell this? I got to tell this story, and I know you get nervous whenever I say I'm going to tell a story, but I want folks to know this because, and this is something whenever we were fighting, I'd always feel bad about because a lot of folks know this. I quit drinking a while back in the June of 2006, and that was really what enabled me to, you know, be in a good place to meet my wife, have all these kids. It literally turned my life around. But the guy who helped me at that moment was you. We were sitting at that bar, public house, downtown Columbia, and we were sitting there. They were putting the seats up, and we were the last two people in that bar. And we're kind of looking at each other. And I remember some guy was running by, like jogging, doing his morning jog. And we're kind of looking at each other like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, we think we're cool because they're still giving us drinks. Everyone else left. They're letting us, but we're, anyway. But I said, man, I think I got to try and stop this for a little bit.
I remember we went over and emptied your fridge. Yeah.
Yeah, you took all my beer and liquor out. And
yeah.
And you said you were going to quit with me for a month.
I think I did it longer than that. And I still do it for like I had a little stint there just recently where I didn't drink for anything for a year. I think it's important. You know, look, I'm happy. I'm proud of your sobriety. That's awesome. And you know, it's obviously it's a one day at a time situation for my, you know, I because of that experience with you, I still, you know, every once in a while I'll just go cold turkey for a year or two sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were the reason, man. You solidarity with me on that. It was amazing. And after that first month, I was like, man, I think I need to keep this going.
And you never turn back, huh?
Never turn back.
Mm-hmm.
I take the communion wine, but I have to, according to my wife. That's it.
Well, you know, being an Irishman, I still will libate occasionally. I definitely did the other night at the Texas A&M game a little bit.
You gonna libate when you go home tonight?
Probably not.
We got some beers in the fridge, man. Great.
You know, I've been doing this stuff with seniors in the mornings, and I don't even know if I'm gonna make that at this point.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the late nights are over for me. I've been 540 riser for a while now.
Now here's the real question: do we think your wife's still watching?
I know she is.
A really good story.
I know
no,
she is. She's obviously
late night.
She's obviously wanted me to say she's, you know, she called all 7 states.
Amy, if you're listening, that's a joke.
She said that several times, and your wife called all 7 states, and then she also said that in the 267 number that it doesn't look like Maine's being included on our count. So that she thinks that when Alaska comes in, that'll be 270. So
interesting. Oh, you know what? She's right. He's going to get one in Maine. They have not called it though. But Trump is up 10 in that. You're exactly right. That one congressional district in Maine. If Trump gets that in Alaska and Pennsylvania, it's over.
Yeah, and I just keep wondering why I'm refreshing here in terms of the election coverage page I'm on, because the New York Times doesn't reproduce on my phone very well. But
yeah, New York Times has not called Pennsylvania.
Oh, surprise! Harris won Minnesota, so that Waltz pick was pivotal. Yeah, I'm looking here. See, Nevada's 75%. So yeah, it would be Nevada. Nevada would be one of the closer ones, or Wisconsin, outside of what my wife's mentioned here.
She's a strong woman, Rick Quinn.
Yeah, it looks like 88% of reporting in Wisconsin. That I just don't know why they don't call that one, because again, it's a 5-point margin.
Meanwhile, Trump on his social is still encouraging people to swamp the vote, talking about Nevada, talking about California. He's still urging people, Montana, swamp.
We're not watching
vote.
any of the TV. I mean, I'm wondering what's going on at the Trump celebration area. But,
he's that's out in public, and he's sitting in the front of the room with everybody.
Yeah, he could, that's one tack that would really take the wind out of her sails for him to go ahead and announce his victory himself without her conceding. But that's a Trump move for sure.
It's bold and aggressive.
Bold and aggressive. Wisconsin should be called. I mean, it's 5 points separation with 88% reporting.
Yeah, and that's huge.
I mean,
88% reporting.
You're not making that up.
No.
Not a 5-point margin.
And Michigan as well, 71% in. 71% of the vote in. Trump's still up. He's projected to win by over 2. There is a 72% chance of him winning Michigan. So, surprising night, guys. Here's another thing that I think is worth mentioning. These margins appear to be sufficient to eliminate the potential for mischief. And I'm saying that not knowing where the next hours could go. But if these things hold the way they're projected to hold, these margins look to be beyond the realm of mischief. Is that important for the country moving forward? Is that important for who riots tomorrow, who doesn't riot tomorrow? Is that important for...
certainly for winning all the swing states, my goodness. I mean, all 7 are in his column. I mean, there's no debate.
And the margins bigger than expected.
The interesting thing is, do you see election deniers in our future?
Oh.
Hillary still says to this day that he didn't really win. I wonder if this will be said of this race now, with this kind of victory.
I'm still not completely convinced that Stacey Abrams isn't the rightful governor of Georgia.
Yeah, and again, I'm just looking at even at Fox. I mean, they've got they're not calling Nevada, and it's just clearly in his column. 187 Republicans now have been elected, so just 31 more seats for majority for Republicans.
And that's in the U.S. House?
Yes.
And that's still tight, though. It's still up in the air, Rick. We don't know yet who's going to have control of the House, do we?
Well, everything I had been saying, I thought that was not really in question, but maybe so.
Yeah, I think they're still
I know
close.
that's right. They did have some people that kind of announced they weren't running again pretty quickly that drew some of that into question. But
Senate is no doubt, though. Senate has gone Republican. A Republican, in all likelihood, in the White House. Now here's the thing: if the Republicans get the trifecta, we've been here before. We've been here with George W. Bush. We've been here once already with Trump. They did not get it done either time.
That's what I was saying earlier. I wish they would just have a real, kind of just get behind one leader. I don't really care who it is, but just get one, particularly in the House, get behind one speaker and give Trump a chance for his first 2 years to get some stuff done, rather than this infighting. let the president guide and lead kind of the body without any of the drama of 3 or 4 votes in one session for a speaker. They're just distracting from the agenda.
Dylan, you talked earlier about the dog catching the car, about the next president and the difficult economic situation they're going to inherit. What does Trump do to remedy that? How does he mollify this oncoming tidal wave? Is there anything he can do? What sort of policies can he try to enact?
There are some things which are within his control. I think tariffs are obviously something that he intends to leverage. The Federal Reserve is not directly within his control. I will assume, though, that they will return to rock bottom interest rates when the crap inevitably hits the fan. But there's some things that are just completely outside of his control, like overvaluation of assets. I mean, what can he do to remedy that? I don't think that there's anything that he can do to remedy that.
Yeah. Should probably do some wellness checks on the Lincoln Project, Rick Wilson and those guys. Should we do some wellness checks on those guys?
Yeah, some of those guys were McCain folks during some of the presidential races. I'm disgusted by them. I really am, particularly Wilson. He just, that's one of those other things I was talking about, the kind of the industrial complex around some of these. It's just a business now. They've made a business out of being anti-Trump, and that's we're going to continue to see that kind of stuff for sure. There's too much money in it. Yeah, too much money. Harris raised over $1 billion. I mean, they're going to continue to want those bucks coming in. So there's a financial incentive for these guys to keep going, even though they got their butts whipped today.
Do you think there's enough government inefficiency? I know Trump has talked about Musk and Ron Paul actually joining forces. I love seeing that. You talk about this Trump coalition. I never thought Ron Paul would be in it, but he's eager to work with Elon Musk on government efficiency. When we look at, though, what's available to cut, discretionary spending is such a small portion of it. And I know I've talked some trash about Nikki Haley tonight, but I got to give credit. One thing Nikki Haley did do on the campaign trail was talk about entitlements in a way that Trump wouldn't do. When she started talking about it, DeSantis started talking about it a little bit. Is there any move, not for current retirees, but is there any move to try to amend our entitlement? We're in quicksand, guys. I mean, this is unsustainable. But it is the third rail. Nobody will ever touch it, will they?
Well, it's, it has to be tweaked. I mean, I just wish being 59, I wish they'd wait about 6 more years.
Well, then, we're also to the point now, interest payments on the national debt eclipsing $1 trillion a year.
Hmm.
Fox News just called the race.
Yeah, I was just about to say, my wife just said,
boy.
That's it. That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen. A historic night.
It really is, and I mean, it's as the smoke starts to clear tomorrow. I mean, like I said, I think there's going to be some soul searching on the Democratic side. I think I'd be, if I were a controlling member of the leadership of the Democratic Party, I'd be telling people to clean their offices out and turn their computers in.
I let Carville take the wheel. He seems to have been one of the loudest voices of reason throughout this screwed up campaign.
Nut job. I got to spend a little time with him a couple of times. He's just absolutely crazy. He is absolutely crazy. If you the Wag the Dog book, if you read that, I mean, it came across pretty clearly that he was. But he's got charisma, and but he's gotten up there in age too, right? I think this is a young man's game, man. Too.
He certainly is not a young man, but Billy Joel, you may be right. He may be crazy, but he might be the kind of lunatic they're looking for.
Well, they've got a decent bench, although none of the records they have. I mean, Shapiro is not. He's not beat. I wouldn't underestimate the guy. I just can't. I would have a hard time believing Gavin Newsom is. They're going to need to pick a face for the party at this point.
He's a pretty face. He's got great hair.
He's got great hair, but he's an idiot.
That's true.
What won this race for Donald Trump?
I think it was what Dylan Point said was I think he was a lot more disciplined this time, and I just think the Democrats went overboard. I think the lawfare and the combination of him being disciplined and just the kind of iconic moments that occurred, the assassination attempt. I mean, in many ways, that may have been when the race was really over. I mean, I don't know that the voters are going to say, yeah, that was what made it happen, but just that 48-hour period where all that came down.
But wasn't everybody's first reaction to seeing, okay, after you realize he wasn't dead, he just won this election? That was what I immediately thought.
Particularly when he stood up, but that was, I was like, man, when I saw that, it gave you goosebumps, right?
Yeah,
still does.
Yeah.
And yet there were ample opportunities after that for Democrats to retake the lead. They did retake the lead. I mean, I think arguably, you mentioned it, Rick, in the aftermath of the convention.
Yeah, but that's not, and that's one of the things that that is not atypical. I mean, parties, the nominees always have a little bounce coming out of the convention, and I think most people thought it was going to tighten, but like she certainly gave a helping hand to Trump for sure. I mean, just the way she handled herself, not really ever full-throatedly answering questions. I still don't think she's at a formal press conference when she taking open questions from the media. To this day, I don't think she's had one since she's been the nominee. So, that's obviously something you can't get away with as a candidate for president.
Nothing from Bakari Sillers in the last couple hours, Dylan.
Yeah, his last update was a post predicting that the Democrats will take the House. He's an optimist.
He is an optimist.
Well, I'll say this. He has to be if he wants to be Clyburn's heir apparent, he's going to have to carry the water for the party.
I just stuck my finger in the camera frame because I wanted to point over to Andy. Andy just published on the FITSNews Twitter an election result that we're going to have to talk about. State Representative R.J. May III has won re-election to House District 88.
About 1,000 write-in votes. There was a write-in campaign waged against him. I saw a number of signs. I live in RJ's district. I saw a number of signs throughout my town for the write-in candidate. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name. I'm not trying to be rude to the guy, but I didn't see anything from RJ, and I haven't heard from him personally. I called him the day that the feds allegedly knocked down his door. I don't think it's allegedly at this point. I mean, they accepted that they knocked down his door, but not knocked it down literally. They knocked on his door. But nobody's heard anything from him. And I would assume that a lot of these people that voted for him are probably straight ticket voters and not FITSNews subscribers, aware of what's going on. Maybe some people said, screw him and still voted for him. But
why has there not been more media coverage of that y'all put out there? I mean, I think you and I both have pretty good sources on what occurred.
Yeah, I mean,
why has there not been more media coverage over the allegation? Because I guess there's no indictments.
Well, yeah, and in fairness, state newspaper, they a couple of days after our report, they published something that was confirming it. They had a few different details. Post and Courier finally got around to covering it, but it's tough in those situations where there are no indictments. Post and Courier was only able to cover it because the feds filed something related to some of the property they'd seized, and they wanted to have an extension on the amount of time they were able to hold on to that property. And so that it was something that I think was supposed to be sealed, but somehow ended up in the hands of Micah Caskey. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to know that, am I? Good old Micah Caskey. He was such a statesman when that news first came out, and he has reverted back to Twitter trolling, which, God bless him. I don't mind Micah Caskey's Twitter trolling anymore.
It's really funny.
He's pretty funny. Yeah,
the guy's
got a great sense of humor, and it makes me feel old. I mean, his father was he and I started at Lake Irma Rotary Club together.
Oh, yeah.
Ski Caskey, Irma Lock and Key. So I've got some history with Micah, but his
dad runs that business.
Yeah,
no kidding.
Well, I think Micah's brother's running it now. I think his father's retired.
I had no clue that was the Caskey family.
Yeah. But it's just interesting that and the timing of all that too. The announcement of it could have, even the party could have taken some steps, but it was just about potentially. But the announcement of the investigation, or however they want to term it, was just after anything could be done about it. So, and they could. One interesting move is they seat their own members.
Yeah,
there could be a vote to not seat them.
They could.
I think to me that would be
That'd be hard to do without an indictment.
It would without any kind of proof of anything lying out there. To me, it would not. That wouldn't be the right thing to do at this point because until they say exactly what's happening, there's no.
Yeah, and the other thing, even if he is indicted, we've talked a lot about due process and the Murdoch saga. We talked about the various constitutional protections. I mean, the man is innocent until proven guilty or until he enters a plea. Obviously, based on what we're hearing on that investigation, he is not in a good position.
It's interesting it's taken this long, though. I mean, to get to the level that it has, you got to wonder what's the holdup.
Well, I think you mean the holdup in indicting him. I don't think they were going to do it before the election. I think when the search occurred in early August, I think feds were already in their window for not indicting somebody. I think it's like 90 days or something.
Unless you're Trump.
Correct. Yeah, very true. Look how that worked out. But yeah, I think RJ's silence has really, really spoken for him, unfortunately, because how do you not shout it if it's not true? How do you not shout it from the rooftops?
Yeah, that's true. I don't really know RJ. I've met him a couple times, and I know that he's worked with some of the folks that used to work with me. But yeah, it's look, it's an unfortunate situation for his family, for damn sure.
Yeah,
that kind of pressure.
Well, he said in this very studio. I mean, I've interviewed the man. I mean, he's been a real champion for a lot of the things that I believe in, and so to see it happen. But these are the kind of allegations, though, that if you are in fact guilty of them, you need to go away for a long time.
Well, yeah, and that's the kind of thing that there's no cure for that. If statistically, if what the rumors are true.
Kirkman so eloquently offered to dig a hole to put RJ in our studio during the interview.
He did.
It sounds like something Kirkman would say. I'm kind of shocked. I'm looking at the numbers in that race. It was not as close as I thought it was going to be.
No, very surprising.
Well, it's going to be once the smoke clears. There's going to be a lot of numbers to look at and try to figure out just the unbelievable victories that have occurred here. And like I said, I keep saying, I'm just in absolute shock that you have districts with 45, 48, 46% districts that should be controlled by the Democratic Party, and they were unable to hold on to.
And the fallout to come from this, so many people in our state are going to be, and we talk about Washington, people going to Washington, but think about a guy like Merle Smith. He's probably going to get a judgeship. There'll be a new U.S. attorney. I mean, all these important positions that will be presidential patronage. I mean, we're going to see a lot of South Carolinians.
I'd be shocked if Merle Smith takes a judgeship.
Really?
Yeah. He's a young man. Why would you? That's a pastor kind of letting him off the pastor kind of job.
Oh no, that's the word I hear, Rick Quinn.
Well, we'll see.
That's the word I hear.
I will bet you a Diet Coke he sticks around.
He made a very high profile endorsement of Trump that a lot of folks told me was tied to a very specific ask. So we'll see.
His name has been around for that for a while, and I know there was a period of time where he was on a short list, Lorna Lindsay's and Tim's short list for that. So it's possible. I just would be shocked.
Well, and he is a guy who's in a bit of a pickle in the leadership role he has in the House of Representatives. The Freedom Caucus, obviously, he tried to take them out. That didn't work out so well. A lot of his rank and file members also very upset with him for how that went down. And the budget process this last round, Merle Smith was not the most popular guy in the House after sending a lot of money to Sumter and telling a few other Republican members that there wasn't any money for them. You remember those fights, Rick?
Well, it sounds all too familiar over the years that's those things are said.
So he might.
It's a great job to have to be speaker, though, and unless you I don't know if he has intentions for higher office, but once you run for a judgeship, that's a swan song. Certainly a swan song politically.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of federal judges become candidates for anything ever again. So you limit your options. He seems a little too young for me for that.
Well, guys, it is after 2 a.m.
Well,
we have hung in here. We've got a president-elect. We've got 4 new Republican senators in South Carolina. We've got a Republican-controlled U.S. Senate, and we're waiting to find out about the U.S. House of Representatives. But, guys, breaking this down with y'all, it's been a lot of fun. Can't thank Andy Fancher enough. Andy has hung in here all night after being in North Carolina so many times over the last couple of weeks doing work on this story about Hurricane Helene and the aftermath, and folks in North Carolina that are struggling. Our prayers are still with those folks. But Andy, you've done amazing work tonight. Jen Wood, if she's still not passed out, we can get her updated in some states. Do we have any states to call, though, before we go? We'll take a look here real quick.
I haven't seen anything, but
no new calls, but we know the outcome at this point, guys. We know the big race that a lot of folks were saying could go either way. We now know which way it's going.
Yeah, and it's Pennsylvania 94% reporting. He still got a 3-point. I'm sorry, Wisconsin 88% reporting. He still has a 4-point lead. It's going to be an absolute sweep. Even Michigan, I'm shocked they're not calling it, even though I know it's only 70% reporting. At least one I'm looking at. It's going to be a sweep.
Yep, and Nevada 71% in, and he is up by 4. So, yeah, he's going to win every single swing state. Unbelievable.
It really is.
Absolutely unbelievable. Guys, I can't thank y'all enough for doing this. Rick, you've got to come back, man. This was,
sure.
I mean, I don't know what my expectation level was when we asked you to do this, man, but you cleared the bar with.
Well, I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. It was a nice kind of first to get back together again for a long, long time.
But we're not done. In addition to, I want to get you back in on a lot of other political stuff, but you're also going to come in here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to sit down and talk about some stuff that you want to lay out to our audience, because I mentioned earlier that I hadn't always written nice things about you. And there was a period in the evolution of your business life, your political life. You guys were on the receiving end of, what some would say lawfare. But you've been criticized, and I want to let you lay out your side of this thing that went down a few years ago, the Probegate.
Yeah, we'll sit down and talk sometime about it, and it's one of those things that, you mentioned RJ and other people that have been in those situations. It's just, very often you're advised not to talk about things. So I was, being a stationary target for 7 years. I'm happy it's going to be over soon.
But you're not a stationary target anymore. You're ready to lay out some things.
Sure. And look, some of it, my father passing, for a long time there was the powers that be had their boot on his neck, and that's no longer the case, obviously. So I'm looking forward to talking about it and having an honest conversation about it.
Yeah, man. Well, we're here for it, because you deserve that opportunity.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate you having me tonight. It was a lot of fun. I'm happy that Trump won. That's at least that's the big news. That's a good day for our country, I think.
I think you're right, Dylan. Any parting thoughts?
Thank you for coming. It's
been a
and
now we got a connection. My daughter was all excited to figure out not only does your fiance being her double, but I think her brother gave I remember him coming into our house to give her guitar lessons many years ago. So that's pretty cool. Small world.
It is. Guys, thank y'all so much. And thanks to everybody for tuning in to our election night broadcast. We will check you back tomorrow on FITSNews.com, where you can keep in touch. All the latest stories on the fallout from this race will be up early tomorrow to help you make sense of this momentous night. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.